across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It is Monday. It is the beginning of a new week. New week, new news. Probably the same old, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, we're going to guide you through the lot of it. I'm going to be with you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be a bumper sequence of truth bombs and, well, maybe the odd rant or two. We'll have to see how we go. There's definitely a lot to sink our teeth into, though, and we've got a packed show coming up. Sitting in, of course, for the inimitable Julie at Hartley-Brewer, who's on a well-earned holiday. We're going to have some fun, aren't we? So strap yourselves in. 3 hours. And we're going to be joined, first of all, by Philip Kisserly. And coming up later on in the programme, we're going to be talking about all of the Mad Burnham plans. I mean, there was no leadership election. There was no, campaign. There was no debate. There was no scrutiny. And he seems to have become like a contestant on Supermarket Sweep. He's running up and down the political aisles, snatching any policy off the shelf he wants. I'm like, mate, I don't think we can afford this. Where's the money coming from? Well, it seems to me he's going to use the parliamentary recess to, I don't know, maybe consult with Diane Abacus and try and add the numbers together. And then let's see how the markets react, shall we? I mean, thank goodness Ed Miliband is not the Chancellor. Oh, no, that's right. He's now the Foreign Minister in charge of the foreign aid budget, and he's going to go absolutely mad on it. Oh, well. Meanwhile, fires rage in the west of France, in the beautiful Gironde. Some really emotional footage on the internet of the French farmers from all the neighbouring regions driving towards those flames as they, they're about 10 miles away, I think, now, from Bordeaux, which is a huge commune of about 250,000 odd people. A lot of people having to be evacuated. I know the region well, but looking at all those French farmers driving towards the apocalyptic inferno with their huge water tanks, I don't know, there was something quite beautiful about it. Never mess with farmers. They will always be there to help. There you go. If you want to talk about any of the topics we're going to be covering today, should we do our housekeeping? Let's. If you want to give us a call, the number is 0344 499 1000. It is your normal network rate. You can call at any time you like, and we'll take down your details, and we'll give you a call back. You do not get customer service like that in the UK anymore, do you? But that's because our call centre's right there through the glass, not over in India. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. If you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you type out your message. You can also send me a WhatsApp message, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp on the same number as the one to phone, 0344 499 1000. All right, without further ado, let's get on, shall we? Because Philip Kisserly, Senior Fellow of the New Culture Forum, joins us now. Good morning. Oh, felt like just yesterday we were having a chat, Philip.
Oh, maybe that's because it was. Hi, Anne. How are you? All right.
I'm very good. I am very good. And, you know, I don't like lying. And sometimes it pains me to have to admit stuff. But I'm going to do it. Some of the stuff that Burnham is saying, I quite like the sound of. The only thing I don't like the sound of is where the money's going to come from, because he doesn't seem to have a very good grasp of arithmetic. I suppose we will find out. But let's look at some of the examples. He is saying he wants to crack down on youth sickness benefits. Now, our welfare bill is £333 billion. I think we've reached an era now where we pay out more in welfare than we actually extract from those people going to work into the exchequer. And when you look at the statistics, 430,000 people, 16 to 24, are on sickness benefits. Sickness benefits largely for mental health conditions such as anxiety and ADHD. I'm sorry, that is not a sickness. That is not something you need a payout for. Get to work. Am I right? At least Andy Burnham is suggesting that this is going to be his policy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And anxiety, ADHD, and all of these complaints, let's say, which seem to me just real life. I'm fairly hyperactive myself. I suffer from anxiety. It's called living, and it's called working, actually. It's in many ways, it's very good for you. You know, you need anxiety. You need to produce. You need to be able to do stuff. You need energy, and that's all part of it. So the point is, for decades, we've pathologized the ordinary state of being, and we've pathologized going to work. So that's why we're in this situation. Now, like you, I really like the sound of this, but the devil's in the detail. First of all, as you quite rightly say, who's going to pay for it? Well, I'll tell you who's going to pay for it, Alex. You and me. We're going to pay for it, okay? That's one thing. But as you say, he's just picking up all of these policies, and this sounds really good. And he's even said things, oh, well, we're going to train people to be plumbers, electricians, you know, this is what we're going to do. Actually, Andy, mate, son, cocker, you're not really, because the people you're talking about, the people you're targeting, the people with ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression, all of these things, they're not going to want to be plumbers. They're not going to sign up to a training course to be plumbers. They're going to want to be drama therapists. They're going to want to be
influencers. Everyone wants to be an influencer now. That means you can sit under a slanket, film something for Instagram, and that's it. Job done.
And my favourite, you know, contemporary dance social interventionists. I think they're going to want to be something like that. Okay. But the reality is, Alex, it's not going to work. But the thing is, it's the way it's framed as well. They're setting themselves up for defeat because what they're framing it in terms of support, this stifling, suffocating word, which they've always had. Oh, you poor little thing, you need support. No, it should be, you're 18 years old, you should get out there and change the world. Will allow you to do that, but we're not going to frame everything in terms of support because that's just setting you up for failure.
I mean, this is it. It's all about consequences, isn't it? Because now you don't have to work. You'll get a handout. You can sit at home. These days, there's so much, you know, so many things battling for attention, whether it's playing a game on the phone or swiping left, swiping right, being on social media, Netflix, all the other sort of on-demand programming. You know, once upon a time, if you didn't have a job, you wouldn't be able to buy anything. You'd be socially shamed and you'd be sat staring at your four walls. Unfortunately, that isn't how it works anymore. So we do need to see a fresh era of consequence from people who sit there and think they can do nothing. The problem is 120 Labour Party backbenchers stood between Sir Keir Starmer and the Welfare Reform Act going through last time because they want to live in a completely consequence-less world. And equally on top of this, a couple of things. First of all, you want people to go into the trades, then you need to sort out immigration because the vast majority of firms get cheap labour from Romanian and Albanian builders who stand outside B&Q and want to work on the black market, number one. Number two, what is this? Apparently 87,000 16 and 17-year-olds are claiming PIP payments, which is the non-means tested benefit intended to cover the extra costs of disability. Two-thirds of those on the upper tier, which is almost 200 quid a week, are getting this for conditions such as anxiety, depression, ADHD. Now, they can be getting this money regardless of whether they're in full-time education or have a job. And I know how the system works. I mean, look, I'm an itchy, scratchy, especially in the winter months, twitchy, itchy, anxiety with an eczema sufferer. Pretty sure that I could say, wow, look at my hives, give me 200 quid extra a week. This is madness. This stuff needs to be scrapped. If Burnham is going to deliver, he is going to have to somehow whip those backbenchers into kowtowing to his demands. I think it's, well, optimistic at best.
Well, it's taking the people who caused the problem in the first place, taking the people who see everything in terms of victimhood and identity politics and saying, right, well, we need to sort it out. They're not going to sort it out. They're just going to make it worse. And as you say, it's about incentivization, and there is no incentive for some people to get off their backsides and go to work. I think there's a broad issue here, which is about one thing, welfare should be a safety net so people don't fall into abject, absolute poverty in which they cannot feed their children. That's what welfare should be. But instead, it is a lifestyle. And because we focus on these things like ADHD and anxiety and depression and all the rest of it, it does fuel this notion of a life. Well, it's part of my identity. I've got ADHD. That's what I am. That's my lifestyle. And I do this, this, and this. So of course you should pay me for it, bigot. That's what I am. How dare you not even think about that? So there is this sense that we've created, and again, I come to this word.
We didn't create it.
No,
they did. The Labour Party largely authored most of this stuff with unfettered immigration during the Blair years, which is when we had the first waves of people coming over and taking all those jobs in the trades. And this mad expansion of welfare, successive governments have done that. You and I have just picked up the tab.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though, don't you? I mean, society. I mean, the establishment. I mean, the blob. I mean, the uni party. I mean, everybody in charge, because it kind of serves them in a way, you know, and the Tory party in particular are really to blame because they never got hold of, they never got control of identity politics, okay? And so if you have now, it completely serves the Labour Party, because if you have bolshy people who are paying their own way, who are quite affluent, who have a say in society, they will push back against this kind of stuff because people don't like scroungers. People don't like spongers. Now, I'm not saying that everybody on benefits is a scrounger
of course
and
not.
a sponger, because they're absolutely not. But we have this culture in which there appears to be something wrong. It's a few with work, with having energy, and with making money and creating wealth, not only for yourself and for other people. That should be the foundation of society, and yet it's pushed aside and people are very wary of it, or at least these people are very wary of it. So when Andy Burnham says, oh, we're going to tackle benefits culture, we're going to do this, we're going to go, no, you're not. You're really not, Andy, because you have created it. Your people have created it. And it's so deep, it's so complex, it needs a completely different set of people with a completely different philosophical outlook to tear it apart and start again. And that's where we are, especially with young people. There's just one more thing, Alex, sorry, just one more thing. What happens with young people is this stuff feeds on itself. So you start by being told that you're depressed and you're anxious and you've got ADHD, and then it fulfills itself in terms of prophecy because you've got nothing to do. You're sat at home all day. So what do you do? And this is the research. This is what people do, okay? They spend all their time on social media, they smoke weed, and they watch pornography. And I can't think of three things which are more detrimental to mental health than those.
Well, no, and you're right. A lot of this stuff ends up being psychosomatic, doesn't it? If you tell people there are all these various acronyms you can put after your name, get some benefits, and you're probably a bit mad, then people just start hoovering it up and start seeing it in themselves. Personality traits, disorders, symptoms of ADHD. It's like, no, you've just been looking at your phone for an hour. That's why you're twitching like a live electricity cable. The problem is, you know, if Burnham's saying, listen, young people on benefits have to demonstrate that they're doing training or that they're taking up job opportunities, or if not, they're doing some sort of community service. Apparently, they've sent out a little sort of missionary group over to the Netherlands where young people have to go out and, you know, scrub graffiti off walls if they're on benefits. Good. Love to hear it. And then they're saying they want to make sure that these people get into the jobs market. But then at the same time, they're crushing the jobs market with their workers' rights bill, with the increase in things like employers' national insurance and the increase in the minimum wage. As a result, Saturday jobs are basically becoming a relic. Apparently 75,000 roles for 16 to 18-year-olds have been lost since Labour came to power. And I can see it everywhere I go, especially in the big conurbations. If you look at the people pulling pints in pubs in London, they aren't young British kids. They're not, because firms are hiring foreign workers because they probably tend to be cheaper. And a lot of companies now just say, well, we can't afford to pay for the extra staff because the cost of having staff has increased. And it seems nice, doesn't it, to say we're going to put up the minimum wage. It seems nice to say, oh, well, you can go on sick leave from day one. It seems nice, doesn't it, to come up with all these ideas that the worker should be at the heart heart of all of our legislation around employment, not the man, not the evil big employers. But when you do that, you stifle the jobs market. I had no problem when I was 14 chucking newspapers through letterboxes and then working behind a till in Safeway. You know, I had to do it because I wanted to get a driving licence and get a car and things like that. And then, you know, later on be able to go out and buy pints in pubs. The difficulty now is for a lot of young people, the jobs don't exist or they don't even need to get them.
Well, I think that idea of working part-time as you did and I did when I was at school Saturday mornings and had a paper round, it's kind of training for adulthood, isn't it? That is the building blocks of independence, actually, and say, look, I've got some money, importantly, which I've earned. That is really, really crucial as a mindset going forward. The idea of appreciating the nature of money and what money is, and sometimes how difficult it is to get it. If it's just given to you, then that is the problem. But there's something else as well, isn't there? I mean, we were just looking at Keir Starmer's cabinet a few weeks ago. Not one person came from a business background. Nobody understands the nature of business in terms of who is actually governing us. Now, that is a real problem because that's the same thing. They don't understand how markets work. They don't really understand inflation. They don't understand the nature of the impact of this stuff on everyday people and everyday life. They don't really appreciate why the cost of living is going up so quickly and the quality of life is plummeting massively. And it's all connected as well. As you said before, mass immigration is the real problem here. You come back to all of this stuff, and that seems to be at the heart of it. You throw identity politics in and you throw social problems like Islamism in, and then we're in real chaos. And when the economy begins to fall apart, my God, as it will do with this man who's just throwing every policy at it he can think of, then that's when you're in real trouble.
Indeed, and I have a feeling when we come back after summer recess and these things are tried, you know, his pledges are attempted to be mobilised, he'll suddenly realise it ain't that easy being Prime Minister. Oh, sorry, Mayor of Great Britain. Before we take a break, I just want to read this message because it is really pertinent. These kids on universal credit and full PIP are raking in more than people on minimum wage. This is true. This is in the papers today saying exactly that. I know a 20-year-old that applied and got PIP because of ADHD and anxiety. Neither were true. She had neither. To swap for a Motability car, which she needed for her cash-only mobile hairdressing business. She got the info from videos on TikTok. 90% of Motability cars have no adaptations. She sees nothing wrong with her Ford. Everybody's doing it, according to her. This is the thing. You know, I'm not on TikTok because I'm, I don't know, a 42-year-old woman, not a 14-year-old doing dance videos. But my understanding is the people that are, you can find all sorts of, what's it called, like sickfluencer tips on how to scheme things off the government. I'll tell you right now, if I wanted to do it, I reckon I could rack up a long list of conditions and get me some PIP. But, you know, I'm a decent, hard-working woman who would rather still contribute to society. Someone else has messaged, I remember years ago, you'd be ashamed to be on benefits. Now it's a badge of honour. This is the thing, how our standards in society have slipped. Now, before we go to break, I've got some rather sad breaking news for you, actually, which is that the wildlife presenter and comedian Bill Oddie has passed away at the age of 85. That's according to his agent. They don't make him like Bill Oddie anymore. They don't make television like the sort that Bill Oddie used to make anymore. Oh, I miss the days when people cared about what birdsong sounded like and could identify a great tit from a blue tit. But there you are. You will be missed, Bill, and thank you for all that you contributed, certainly to my childhood. OK, we're taking a short break. Back after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. You know, during the advert break, I was just thinking then about Bill Oddie and the fact that he was like a king of the birders, you know, the what do they call, like twitchers? Twitchers? Tweet? I don't know. People who know about birdsong. I've moved to the countryside and I've got into this, right? You can actually get this app called the Merlin Bird app, and it's a bit like Shazam for birds. And you can just go like that. It's made by Cornell University. Wave your phone in the air, and it picks up all the bird songs around you. And you get this little chart of all the birds, and as they make their noise, the little bird lights up on your screen. Anyway, it's very cool, the stuff that we do in the wilds of the West Country. But no, it's a lost art. People don't go around and appreciate nature anymore like they used to. And yeah, maybe actually we'll get a bit of resurgence in the interest in the little critters and flying things that occupy our gardens this summer in memory of Mr. Oddie. All right, let's speak with Philip Kisserly again. Hey, Phil. Oh, what should we talk about now? Shall we talk about the fact that Ed Miliband, as our new Foreign Secretary, he's apparently nicked the seat on the World Bank that is normally delegated to a junior minister, because his huge ambition is to get absolutely deep into increasing foreign aid for stuff like climate change. Now, can you not see the madness? 1 minute he's the energy secretary and he's basically responsible for sending a glut of taxpayer money over to China for the net zero rubbish so we can buy all their solar panels and windwalls. China, meanwhile, are the ones chugging all of the CO2 into the air, making these things as we deindustrialise. And now he wants us to write even more charity cheques for countries that are apparently affected by climate change by boosting the foreign aid spending. It's hocus pocus. It's nonsense. It's paying for virtue. It's basically funding complete and utter fantasy and fiction. If you really wanted to help the Horn of Africa, get them fertiliser. They need fertiliser. That's what they need, not giant charity cheques for, like, I don't know, put tampons in schools and do a special rain dance for trans activism. Or, oh, well, we better write an open-ended amount of money to Pakistan because they want reparations because they say they've got 1 degree extra on the blimmin' thermostat this summer. I mean, it's just, oh, can that man just disappear from public life, please?
Well, he's not going to, is he? He's here to stay, and it is all of those things that you talk about. It's just fantasy. And when I see the words World Bank, I just hang my head and cry. I mean, this is a post-war institution. I think it was set up in 1944, actually, and it's like the EU. It was created for a different world. It was created for the immediate post-war era, and what's happened? It's just mutated into something else, into this identity politics victimhood thing, but as we were talking about before, but on a grand scale, on a global scale. It's ultimate globalism. Now, the point that Ed Miliband is making, that all of these countries are victims of us, are victims of the West, are victims of the West and Britain, and it is this ridiculous, one-dimensional, partial, untrue narrative, because they have benefited from innovation, they have benefited from finance exponentially over the years, and yet we can only see them in this very patronizing, paternalistic way as victims. Now, this really does have to stop, and this man is dangerous because we are a failing nation at the moment. We don't have money to throw around to other people. We've just talked about the ridiculous levels of unemployment. We've just talked about welfare, all of those things. We are in trouble as a and our future looks very, very glum. So the first thing in terms of all of this spending, where does Andy Burnham get all of the money from that he plans to spend? Well, first of all, let's cut foreign aid rather than taking a senior minister taking a place at the World Bank. Let's forget about all of that stuff and let's focus for the moment on ourselves, because to do any good in the world, you need your house in order, and our house is chaos.
But also, you know, we should actually take a leaf out of China's book, because the way that China go about doing their foreign aid, aka the Belt and Road Initiative, is making a load of jobs and employment for Chinese companies to go and actually build critical infrastructure in the developing world. And thereby, they actually say, well, look, we'll build your highways, but in return, we want access to, you know, rare earth minerals. All right, we'll build your dry dock, but in return, we want access to that port so we can control international maritime routes and shipping routes. If we had any common sense, we'd get rid of foreign aid and replace it with foreign direct investment. I've lived and worked in India, in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in Ghana, in Kenya. I get how this stuff works at a developing world government level. And I can tell you one thing, when you write the big charity check to a, you know, an African nation, about half of it goes into the pocket of the, you know, tin pot dictator. The rest of it just disappears with handouts to all these sort of intermediaries. It doesn't build the well. It doesn't electrify the north of the country that still live in mud huts. What is doing that is China, and China's doing it in exchange for access to all the things we need if we were going to make our own solar panels or make our own wind turbines, and therefore reindustrialise and give those jobs to British workers and turn this not a false economy into, I don't know, let's just hoover all of the money out of taxpayers' pockets and hand it over to Beijing. These people, they're so ideological. They don't get it. They've never been to these places. They've never sat down and dealt with these people properly. They live in their ivory towers with their communist textbooks and their do-gooder mentality, thinking they're superior to the rest of us, and half of them couldn't even point to somewhere like Cambodia on a map.
No, I mean, first of all, you have to have a sense of self-preservation. And these people just simply do not do that. They want to obliterate us. They want to obliterate our identity as a sovereign nation. So they're not going to look out for our best interests on the world stage. This is also about entrepreneurship, isn't it? This is about seeing opportunities and making those opportunities work for us. And if you can do good for other people while you're doing that, all well and good. That's great. I'm all for that. But that's how it should work. That's what the priority should be. But the thing is, you just made a really, really interesting and important point there, Alex, about where this money goes, right? It doesn't go, most of it doesn't go to where it should. There's ample evidence to suggest that.
None of it.
But the key thing is, they don't care, because it's really not about doing good. It's about narcissism and virtue. It's about seeming to be being good. It's about self-obsession. And that is what we have on all levels of this country. And what it does is it does two things. One, it costs us money, huge amounts of money. But two, it puts us in danger. Now, if you don't have enough money to function, then you are always in danger. That goes for individuals as well as nations. But again, it comes back down to this notion of toxic empathy, okay, and not looking out for ourselves. If you want to do good in the world, you have to look out for yourself first. You have to get your house in order, then you can make changes. But just at the moment, Alex, I'm not bothered about the rest of the world. I'm worried about us. I don't care about anything else just now, because I'm frightened of what tomorrow holds for us. And I think viewers feel exactly the same. And I think that's what we should be thinking.
I think people listening to this would agree that they would far rather see British geologists going and surveying the Horn of Africa for water tables and then building the wells to get that water out to irrigate the fields so they don't face famines and droughts than they would writing a massive cheque for climate change, which doesn't even mean anything. Now, before we go, let's talk about this, because when I first saw this story, I was like, oh, right, is it? Compulsory voting could be on the table as Burnham ponders electoral reform. Well, I'll tell you what they're going to do. I said that. I've been saying this, right? I've been saying this for months. When Andy Burnham comes in, they're going to sit there, crunch the numbers, do the maths and see how they can rig the system, gerrymander, change the nature of the plebiscite to make sure that the left wing stay in power forever. Because we've seen them cancel local elections. We've seen them mess about giving votes to 16-year-olds, move to a system of proportional representation in Wales, reframe boundaries, although that's normally the Conservatives' favourite game. They cannot help themselves. If they don't think they can win, they have to change the game. And so what he is looking for now is potentially making voting compulsory. Now, I don't like that. I don't think you should have to vote. I think everyone should use the vote. I think it's a fundamental right, and I think that it's wasted if you don't. But the idea of compulsory voting I find a bit gross. And I thought, why is he doing this? Why might he be looking at that? And I thought, surely that's going to stack the odds in his favour. It wouldn't. Apparently, 54% of people that didn't vote in the 2015 general election then turned out and voted in the 2016 Brexit referendum, and the majority of them, 2/3 of them, backed leave. Of all the people that regularly do not turn out to vote, most of them would vote reform. So let's see if when rubber meets tarmac with this particular proposal, if it ever sees the light of day. I would imagine not. Votes for 16-year-olds, moving to PR. I have a feeling that that is possibly in train.
Yeah, I think so. But I think again, you mentioned the Brexit referendum there, didn't you? And they were so confident they thought they were going to win because they lived in an echo chamber, a silo, which all they heard was the things that they agreed with. So I think they're going to get a real shock if they try to implement any of this nonsense. Look, I mean, I've been banging on about this as well, and I agree with you that I don't think that there should be compulsory voting. I think people should appreciate what they have, and that, you know, the privilege of being able to go out and vote and change something if you don't like it. It's for all of the, you know, the recent by-elections, the percentage of people who just haven't got off their backsides and gone and registered their opinion is appalling. That's what we need to do. We need to demonstrate to people that if they want change, real change, they don't just sit at home and complain about it or bury their heads in the sand. They need to be proactive. Everything we've talked about today is about being proactive, getting out there, imposing yourself and changing things. And that's what we need to do. We need to change the culture of this society. Everything that is imposed top down, everything that is big government, you must do this, you must subscribe to that, you must vote this, you must do that, is always chaotic, and it's always a failure because it's a manifestation of paternalistic socialism that just simply does not work, and we don't want it in this country.
We don't want it, sadly. We've got it without a single vote being cast. Oh, thank you ever so much. It's great to catch up with you again, Philip. Next time, let's not leave it so long. The brilliant Philip Kisserly, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. A couple of messages, and I'm going to remind you of the numbers. I love this. This is hilarious. Someone sent a message saying a friend of mine came into the pub yesterday, not seen him for some time. I got up and said, "What do you want to drink?" And he replied, "I'll get the drinks in. You're working." Honestly, you shouldn't laugh, but it's so true. The problem with benefits and PIP, etc., is that although people are given, say, £2,000 in benefits, it is tax-free, national insurance-free, student loan-free. Make the benefit people pay tax on their benefits if they want to feel equal. Let's tax them equally. Question, though, how much tax could we generate from taxing them? Seems a bit weird to give money from the taxpayer and taxing it. I mean, I don't know. Right. OK, we're going to be taking a short break. Numbers on the screen there, 03444 99 1000. Number to call if you want to register your interest. We'll give you a call back last quarter of an hour of the show. 8722 if you want to send a text like the word talk before you write your message. We're back to talk about geopolitics and the state of our defence after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, as night follows day, if you want to be somebody in the Western world, a statesman, a world leader that commands respect, that everyone knows they mean business, you know what you got to do? You got to get that photo call with Zelensky, don't you? So there he goes. He's out the cupboard. He's been dragged over to meet with Andy Burnham, our new Prime Minister, who has pledged to continue the UK's unwavering support for Ukraine. They will be meeting today. He's going to be the Prime Minister's first international visitor, of course. They're going to be visiting a naval base where Burnham will announce the sharing of intellectual property behind the UK's new Stonecloak electronic warfare system, enabling Ukraine to produce technology at scale. This is all about intercepting Russian drones. I love the idea of visiting a naval base where, I don't know, most of our naval fleet are sort of stuck, unable to set sail for the high seas, but there you are. The symbolism isn't lost on me. Meanwhile, however, things are getting, well, interesting, let's say. We've got a situation now where Iran is threatening to engage with what is going on in Ukraine ever since Ukraine targeted an Iranian vessel, bringing warfare equipment over to Russia. At the same time, it has been revealed over the weekend that perhaps Russia has been giving Iran some intel on US bases in the Middle East, enabling Iran and its proxies to strike those bases. Although Donald Trump did warn Iran and China, don't you get involved with the Russia stuff, and said to Russia, don't you get involved in that stuff. If you do, there will be a price to pay. Well, here's some news for you, Donald. The anti-Western axis has been going on for a very long time. The big question is, are these wars I mean, they are kind of merged already, but are they going to fuse together even more? What might that mean? Well, let's speak now to the brilliant military and defence analyst, Colonel Simon Diggins, and possibly one of the greatest journalists on planet Earth, David Patrikarakos, special correspondent for the Daily Mail. Simon, I'm going to start with you. Talk to me about the significance of the anti-Western axis, these two separate theatres of war, one in the Middle East with Iran, one in Russia and Ukraine, how they're interconnected, and if things could escalate quite quickly, if things could sort of conflagrate further, the more that they help each other out.
Alex, David, good morning to you both. In a sense, the campaigns have already been linked and been linked for a while. We know, for example, going back a while, that the drones the Russians used were initially a variation on the Iranian Shahed drone, and there's a sort of natural tendency to, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and so they come together on that basis. Russia and China have had a long-standing agreement working together, and China's been quite careful about what it does because it's worried because of sanctions that come its way. Iran has no such difficulties dealing with either Russia or China because essentially in terms of legal sanctions, it's got so many legal sanctions on it that it may as well just carry on doing what it's doing. And there is some evidence, it is slightly disputed evidence, that the Russians and the Chinese have been assisting with the targeting of the Iranian missiles against the bases around the Middle East, the US bases around the Middle East. Though there is dispute because the targets seem to be largely static facilities. If the Chinese and Russian military were using their full, if you like, military spectrum intelligence, then they might be able to engage more moving targets. But that's still a kind of a question mark that's sitting there. Cooperation, absolutely, they're going on there. Exchange of information, absolutely going on there. And obviously, they're watching tactics that have been played out in Ukraine and then been replayed in Iran. And don't forget, Ukraine sent air defense systems to assist with the defense of the Middle East earlier on in the year as well. So, yeah, the campaigns are very much merging.
Yeah, David, your views on this, because at the same time as all of this, we had the headlines that Iran has threatened to target RAF Fairford, the fact that, well, surprise, surprise, the IRGC have been shipping in terror cells and operatives via illegal migration routes. Who knows which HMO they could be sitting in right now as they plan to go and attack an airbase. Where do we stand in all of this? Because on one hand, here we are getting out Volodymyr Zelensky for the photo call, you know, like I said, said has to happen. Every single, you know, Western leader's got to get that picture in. And that's great. I agree. We should back Ukraine entirely, but we're not prepared, really, it seems, to do the same thing when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, although perhaps maybe Andy Burnham is going to change direction on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you said in your intro, hello to both of you today, you know, it's a standard thing now, a photo op with Zelensky, and this has been the case going back, you know, to the Tory governments, because amid the domestic misery, it's always nice to get a photo with, you know, the man who's, you know, holding the line for the West. I've said this for a while now. Ukraine is a garrison state. For the West, you know, even the Romans understood if you want to protect your borders, you pay the locals to do it. And this is the situation we seem to have fallen into. Simon's absolutely correct when he talks about this battlefield has coalesced for years now. You know, I often say that or not me personally, but the positions I've been in, have been attacked. I've been attacked by Shahid drones in southern Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, Israel, and in Iraq, you know, by when the Iranians or the Shia militias were striking. That's a symptom of how these things are coming together. Look, we have a conglomeration of powers. We can call it an axis. It's not really an axis in the sense that, you know, there's not really very much in common between China and Russia and Iran and North Korea, except they're brought together by a desire to punch holes in this Western-led axis, you know, the status quo, the Pax Americana, whatever you want to call it. We can't really call it an alliance of democracies because it includes, you know, Gulf states that are not democracies. Where Britain sits within all this, it's a very good question. You know, parallel with the photo op with Zelensky, you know, Burnham will not confirm that we'll go to 3% spending on defence GDP, which isn't enough anyway. And even that figure in and of itself is nothing without an overhaul of procurement. You know, really investing in certain things that we need to invest in. Procurement hasn't been great these last few years. I speak to the MOD a lot, and serving soldiers and former soldiers, and I know there's great frustration, but what is very clear is that the situation is getting worse. I think that people talk about a new Cold War, but I think that that's, first of all, it's hot in many places, as the old one was, but there's not really a parallel. With the Soviet Union, we had no overlapping economic interests at all, really. You've got to think now we're in a globalized system where China, we are so economically interlinked, it's hard to understand what a major collaboration or a global war looks like, but we are clearly heading towards that in some form or another. In fact, I often say we've already been in it for many years because we're just attacked in various different ways. So Britain needs to step up. Wes Streeting says he'll resign. Okay, maybe he will, maybe he won't, but it doesn't solve the overarching problem. That is political will.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, Simon. I know you've also campaigned for a long time on boosting money to defence. We do live in a very critical period. Perhaps the Cold War never ended. Perhaps we are already in some sort of form of World War III. And yet, Andy Burnham doesn't seem to be taking defence seriously at all. He's barely spoken about it. Yes, the photo shoot with Zelensky later is going to sort of, you know, throw a few tidbits to those who want to think he's getting on with the job. Our new Chancellor actually resigned as Defence Secretary when the extra cash was not added to the Defence Investment Programme. He's the one who now controls the purse strings, where Streeting is the one saying he will resign if the money doesn't come forth. And yet, I don't know, the Prime Minister himself just seems to be very lackadaisical. He'd rather make little selfie videos for, you know, pulling pints and talking about his favourite pub snack, completely avoiding the fact that most of the world seems to be picking up arms or drones or attacking vital infrastructure or cyber or whatever it may be, that we live in a very dangerous world right now. I don't think he gets it.
No, I mean, I think that's not unfair. I mean, his focus has been very much on domestic issues, a strong element of kind of feel-good factor. And we all enjoy a pint, so there's the Prime Minister calling a pint. And looks like he can enjoy a pint himself. It's what Nigel Farage is about that. You know, £2 bus fares, all the rest of the things, all good stuff, and, you know, very much aimed at the kind of domestic market. But the world will come round and snap at his heels. The issue about the 3% and everything goes, and you're absolutely right, everything you said. It's not just 3%, and that's fine. It's 3%, and plus, you know, everything we haven't been spending over the last 10 or 15 years. So there's a huge amount of catching up to do. I think he's hoping that when John Healey has a proper chance to look at the books, of course, that's what Healey's doing at the moment, that he can find a way to show a positive increase. And I think, I guess, we're looking ahead to September, when I think we understand there's going to be some kind of spending review, and John Healey's first major statement as the Chancellor. I think that will be the real testing point from there. In the meantime, those of us who believe absolutely that we are under-defended and basically at risk need to keep making that point, because otherwise he will just go and find some nice sort of cosy money to spend on whatever the hell kind of feel-good thing that's going on.
Guys, thank you ever so much. I'm going to have to say goodbye to you both now. We've run out of time, but it's been a real honour and a privilege speaking to such intelligent men with great life experience. And do you know what? Bit of a theme running through the programme today. Let's join some dots, shall we? Like it's a little children's puzzle book. Because Andy Burnham said that there's far too many young people who think they've gone tonto, sitting around under slankets, not doing anything, and it's about time those 16 to 24-year-olds in fine physical condition get out and do something with purpose. And at the same time, he's being told, well, you know, defence is lacking. Have you seen our troop sizes? It's about half of what it was during the Falklands. We can't afford that. How about those young people who say they got ADHD and are now claiming about 200 quid a week to do nothing? I don't know. They could do some drills, couldn't they? Some press-ups. I don't go over an obstacle course, learn to fire a gun, serve their country, become patriots, learn hierarchy, discipline. That would be far too commonsensical, though, wouldn't it? All right. Now, before we go to advertisements, let me remind you of the numbers. If you want to have a chat with me, it would be great. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate. 87222 is the number to send a text message. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before you write your message. You can also send a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp on that same big number, 0344 499 1000. I cannot wait to speak to some of you just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Right, let us hit up the phone lines because we are joined now by the wonderful Lisa in Nottingham. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, how are you?
Very perky, very happy. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much.
Good.
So I'm bringing today for 2 points. The first one is, why does our government continue to send out millions in foreign aid supporting Ukraine, etc., when we haven't got our own military defence to defend us if them other countries decide to attack us because we're supporting for the likes of Ukraine? The second point I'd like to make is regards to younger people. I totally agree with what you're saying regarding the disabilities, because a lot of people do abuse the system, which ruins it for others. But when it comes to school leavers and college leavers trying to get a job, like we used to get a Saturday job and a paper round, a lot of places don't offer that anymore because technology is taking over. So everything is self-service, and places, many banks, certainly in my town, have literally closed down and everything's done online banking. So one way around that maybe would be that they could, if they are having to claim some benefits until they can get into proper employment, is to do a voluntary scheme, because plenty of places need volunteers. But that would have to get looked at, because often they require references of places that they have worked, or they want experience. So that's what I wanted to put towards you today. Thank you.
Both excellent points. Let's take them one by one. So first of all, why are we still sending big checks to Ukraine? Well, you heard, I think it was David Patrikarakos say, it's about the idea of there being a sort of garrison state here, a country which is doing all the hard work so we don't have to, which is the block between our adversaries and us. And without sounding overly cynical, the military-industrial complex is rather enjoying that war at the moment. We are developing technologies at the rate of knots because there's real-life R&D in the battlefield. So that is part of the reason. But the problem is the rest of our geopolitical nous doesn't seem to add up. When you've got people still wanting to glad-hand Hamas leaders, recognise the state of Palestine, do everything that falls into Iran's lap, you've got to understand that all these things are interconnected. Now, the other thing about young people and doing voluntary work is interesting, because they actually did have a fact-finding mission, this current Labour cabinet, going over to the Netherlands, where that is a requirement. It's a stipulation. If you are a young person out of work and receiving handouts, you have to go, roll up your sleeves and do something. And so if they bring that in, I think that is a very good idea. And, you know, when you talk about young people leaving school or leaving university and trying to find immediate, say, casual work, that's normally the summer period, isn't it? It's round about now. They're not in their classrooms. They're not in their lecture halls. I don't know, are they pulling pints? Are they working as baristas? I tell you what a lot of young people used to do back in the day. They used to be seasonal workers. They would go and pick fruit and veg. But now we just have coachloads of Lithuanians coming over instead. I think there are lots of ways in which we could look at making sure young people have productive existences. And like I said, I think the armed forces as well would be very much boosted by having some of these people join their ranks. But let's see. And the noises coming out of Andy Burnham on this front are positive. I agree with a lot of what he's saying. Sort of stuff that actually many of us on the right wing have been saying for a long time. So he may have been talking left. Is he going to govern a bit more right? I think the big challenge facing Mr Burnham is whether his backbenchers will let him. Lisa, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Michael in Birmingham. Hi, Michael.
Hi, you've touched on a lot of what I was going to say, but I've got a slightly different angle. Whilst I'm all for making young people, you know, earn benefits and whatever, hey, wait a minute, let's not have a two-tier benefit system. What about the $15 billion a year we pay to house people in four-star hotels? I'd have them out doing work before I'd have our young people.
I just wouldn't have them here at all.
Well, I wouldn't have them here, but if we've got to have them here, let them pick the fruit. By the way, I'm 65, and the fruit used to go picked back in the 70s. We never had a shortage there.
I know.
So all this stuff...
No, but I agree. All these people that we're giving shelter to, smartphones, 3 meals a day, tellies in their room, yoga classes, balloon shaping workshops, all the mad stuff that the leftists seem to think that these beatified poor illegal entrants to our country, who are probably terrorists and would-be rapists, desperately need to make them feel happy and welcome. Why don't we actually make some of those people, if we are able to vet them, that's the difficulty, isn't it? Why aren't they made to go out and clean toilets and scrub graffiti to show their gratitude for our hospitality, for giving them the asylum? Their lives were so wretched and dangerous before, the poor things. They couldn't cope with being in those horrible countries. They've had to come here. It was their only choice. It was their last resort. Normally, someone in that situation would be overwhelmed with a sense of sincere gratitude for the host nation, that they wouldn't mind rolling up their sleeves and giving back. The idea for these people, though, is they all go work on the black market, don't they? They actually are working. That is the problem here, Michael. They're delivering Uber Eats and, you know, all the rest of these things. They're sort of peeling around on various black market building sites, selling some drugs, canned car washes, vape shops, you name it. They're making a packet. And if you work out, right, because these people aren't paying tax, they're not having to pay accommodation, they're not having to pay for their food, they could earn about 100 quid a day cash in hand from being a delivery rider. So let's say they do that 5 days a week. That is £2,000 a month tax-free. Now, most people earning a 6-figure salary, once they've paid tax on that and their mortgage has come out and all the other costs associated with, I don't know, being an independent person who pays your own way, if you've got £2,000 in your pocket to spend willy-nilly on what you like, you're doing very, very well. These people in these hotels, they got work. That is the problem with a lot of it. Michael, thank you ever so much. Let us have a little voice note now, shall we? This is Graham.
I don't care how good a talker he is or how nice a person Burnham is. He's going to drive this country off a financial cliff, and in a very short period of time. I'd just like to read just half of this reading that I've got by Dr. Adrian Rogers from 1931. It says, when half of the people get the idea that they do not have to work because the other half is going to take care of them, and when the other half get the idea that it does no good to work because somebody else is going to get what they work for, that is the end of any nation. You cannot multiply wealth by dividing it.
There you go. Very factually put. Right, OK, we are going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because we'll be right back. Oh, go on. I was having a countdown in my ear. It's not a hard out. We've got to talk up to the news. What's going on with the timings there? I've got an earpiece in. Give me sensible instructions. Oh, gosh, it's a countdown for the voice note. You could have said that. You could have put the duration of the voice note on my little screen there. Blimmin' heck, Ted. You don't have to make my life difficult sometimes. Right, OK, let's do some messages. Why would the armed forces want NEETs? They're bound to be sued for bullying and hurt feeling. I'll tell you what, though, what would help counteract the woke mind virus would be a little bit of hard graft for the military. Alex, our biggest threat to national security is the government. The Labour government can't and won't protect Britain and British citizens. Just watch the bins being emptied, says Dave in Dorset. I reckon the four gentlemen grafting in the heat are all over 50. Could do with some of the bone idle on benefits helping out. Regarding Philip and his idea of earning money to share, very few people share anything these days. It's all, I've worked hard all my life and only get a small pension and a self-centred claptrap like that. I always work to provide for my family, but many old people these days don't want to help out anyone and use their low pension bleating to get gifts and holidays paid by others. Well, there we go. Maybe we should learn to share and share alike. Right, this really is the hard out. We are going to take an advert break. Don't go anywhere, because I'm going to be back just after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
They're so naughty, can I just say, in the gallery. They are winding me up now because throughout that advert break, Ted was in my ear going, 15, 14, 13. I tell you what, when you're doing live presenting, it is like being Pavlov's dog. The minute you hear someone doing like numbers in your ear, you're like, oh my God, I've got to shut up. I've got to do something. Like, what is the instruction? But there we go. Every now and then wires get crossed and it's nobody's fault. Certainly not the fault of the presenter anyway. I'm joking. I have blonde moments. Anyway, I digress. That's live broadcasting, isn't it? Every now and then a plate gets dropped and you probably find it funny. We do as well. I'll tell you what I don't find funny, though. What I don't find funny right now is the state of the UK economy. What I don't find funny is that feeling that despite having been taxed dry, I have a feeling I'm about to get taxed even more. What I don't find funny is that without any sort of plebiscite, any sort of recourse to public opinion, any leaders' debate, any election, any new mandate, it seems Andy Burnham's bringing in some pretty radical new policies. I mean, out of nowhere, he's like, let's change council, let's get rid of council tax and change that with a property tax. Loads of stuff, loads of radical things, OK, that have just come out of the blue. Anyway, maybe they'll work, maybe they won't. I'll tell you what at the moment doesn't look like it's going to work, which is the things he's announced so far. Well, they've only cost 1.7 billion, which, quite frankly, are coins down the back of the sofa. This is £2 bus fares, VAT cuts on electricity, business rates being reduced on hospitality. Three policies I think most of us agree a step in the right direction. It is reducing some of the onus on those of us who do go out of work and, you know, run businesses to keep paying for stuff. We like it, although, frankly, I'm afraid it doesn't go far enough for most people to actually feel the full effects of that. But all this other stuff, right? The radical changes to social care. OK, right, I think we can all agree we definitely need to address a situation where hospital beds are being clogged up by people who, frankly, should be cared for in their own houses. But potentially the annual cost of such an ambitious project as to create an adult care, social care service is 18.7 billion. Not small money. Also, this commitment to reaching 3% of GDP by 2030 will cost £10 billion a year. Yes, we want increase in defence spending, so that's 28.7 billion. The increase in foreign aid, OK, we don't really want that, but there you go, we're going to get it anyway, £8 billion. He wants to renationalise utilities. Well, just Thames Water alone, which frankly needs something being done to it, 22.7 billion. Now, the Conservatives have got out a calculator and suggested that all of this increased spending will be £96 billion a year. You may remember Rachel Reeves, older Rachel from accounts, the gloomster, the doomster, who kept telling us we're in dire straits, but then turned around and managed to find some fiscal headroom. Well, that 23.6 billion that she had in March is now only 10 billion. OK, I suppose John Healey has the summer to do the maths and try and make all of this stuff add up. Let's just hope he's not going to be asking Diane Abbott for her arithmetic expertise. Let's speak now to Richard Powerside, former Labour Party official and author. Look, I'm being very honest, being very candid. Some of the things that Andy Burnham is announcing are good. Some of them sound necessary. A lot of them, though, when you put them all side by side, you're kind of like, well, where's the magic money tree?
Well, there's not going to be a magic money tree. What there's going to be is John Healey being pretty tough on the cabinet, trying to make them find savings, which some of which have already been announced. And I have no doubt there'll be plenty more, and there'll be plenty of people, including perhaps me, complaining about them. But it's going to have to happen. Alongside that, yeah, you know, there'll be changes to tax. There won't necessarily be tax rises, but I think, like most people would say, our tax system is really badly structured. It could be structured in a way that would be fairer. It could be structured in a way which would actually encourage economic activity and therefore hopefully eventually tax receipts more. But like you say, we're not going to find this stuff out until the budget. Probably that's the autumn. I personally feel very confident in the government being on the side of ordinary people, working class and middle class people, people and making sure that we get the best out of it. But it won't be an easy job, I agree.
Well, you and I, Richard, do you know we need to mark this date in our diary? It's sort of like we're fighting on the same side and agreeing about things. Shh. Don't let the audience know. Anyway, no, but it is true, isn't it? I mean, look, some of the things that Burnham's talking about, I think, are very positive. Just, is it going to be delivered? Will the backbenchers agree? Well, perhaps this is the man with a flutter of those eyelashes that may be able to cajole the backbenchers into actually passing welfare reform. But when it comes to net zero, I don't think he's going to let go of that one, is he? And that is a huge cost. We know it's helping to deindustrialise the nation. We've now found out, rather farcically, that a glut of power from Britain's wind farms has actually added £1 billion to energy bills, not because it was entering into our telly boxes and our fridges and doing us any good as consumers. No, it's because actually sometimes wind operators are forced to curtail output so we don't have surges in the grid. And when they do that, they're then compensated for it. This comes after another report which came out over the weekend, a whistleblower from NESO, which is essentially the grid, the National Energy System operator, is talking how we can't accurately model the modern power system, that these surges potentially are quite dangerous, and that apparently an internal report shows that on June the 23rd, as England faced Ghana in the World Cup, the electricity grid breached 5 operational safety constraints, system security was compromised, and quite frankly, as we fight to try and balance supply and demand minute by minute, these renewables are making things very difficult and potentially putting us in a very precarious situation. Your thoughts?
I'm going to start with the first one because we know more facts about it. Basically, it's right-wing newspaper nonsense. What we've been told today or over the weekend is that in there, with the costs of shifting to renewable electricity, there is this annoying 900 million extra cost to balance out extra wind energy coming in. It is quite a lot of money, right? It is quite a lot. But it is so much less than the cost of not shifting to renewables. It is so much less than the 150 billion or so that we have spent on energy over the last few years because we've been dependent on fossil fuel gas over the last 5 years when prices have been on a roller coaster. And it is way less even than the tens of billions that we've saved on our bills over the last few years because we use renewables for a good chunk of our energy. And you can play, I'll admit that you can play around with those stats in different ways, but the simple fact is this: we've invested a lot of money in renewables. That has cut the amount that we spend on pricey fossil fuels so much that the switch to renewables has saved us tens of billions, possibly hundreds of billions of quid.
But we know we need baseload energy because renewables themselves cannot sort of create a continuum. We saw those huge blackouts, didn't we, a year ago in Spain and France. No one's really revealed what was behind that. But it was one of two things. It was either China being pesky with kill switches, or it was surges which actually blew up the grid system. Neither are particularly, heartwarming. And the difficulty is with a lot of our spending on renewables, it's money leaving this country. We were promised all of these green jobs, weren't we? What we've seen is a decimation in places such as Aberdeen when we went after fossil fuels and the oil industry. And we've largely seen a huge amount of money going over to factories in China that are still pumping out CO2 into the atmosphere.
So lots of different things there to respond to, Alex.
There are.
I'm going to pick one, which is that you talked about how this has been a cost to us, and it just hasn't been. The switch to renewables has unquestionably saved us tens of billions, possibly hundreds of billions of quid. And there's a really simple reason for this, right? Even though we are putting loads of money into this investment, which eventually will make our bills really cheap, but definitely has not done so yet, even though we're putting loads of money into that, the money that we are not spending on gas as a result is way more. And that is, yes, because people like Putin and the Ayatollahs and indeed Donald Trump play all sorts of games with our energy system that we can't really control, and it puts our gas prices up. We're already getting off that roller coaster, and the result of getting off that roller coaster by using wind power mostly means that we are insulating ourselves, making ourselves less vulnerable from that kind of precarity, which is meaning that our bills are lower than they otherwise would be. And in the long term, it means that we're not going to be at all exposed to lots of those fluctuations because we'll be using clean, homegrown energy, which is free at the point of source, right? Like natural gas or fossil fuel gas. Trump and the Ayatollah and Putin can manipulate the price of that. They can't do anything about the wind and the sun. And then once we're using that, we'll be far more protected from all the geopolitical games that they play.
This is
That's what I want for my
difficulty.
bill.
We can't do anything about the wind and the sun either. So when we don't have much sun, we're in trouble. When we have too much wind, we're in trouble. We still have the highest energy bills in the developed world. And when I look over at good old Norway, with their sovereign wealth fund, getting all that delicious fossil fuel out of the North Sea right next to our own oil fields, being able to shore up their pensions, things like adult social care, Burnham's big dream. I'm a bit jealous, Richard.
Well, what you're jealous of there, Alex, is that they've got different geology to us. And if you think
it's the same part of the sea. They're next to each other.
Absolutely. I mean, sorry, Alex, but that's literally untrue. It's not the same part of the sea. It's geologically different. And the result is that there is a lot more oil and gas in the Norwegian bit of the North Sea, which is really accessible, whereas in our bit of the North Sea, it's really hard and therefore really expensive to get to. And the result of that is that even when governments have tried really hard to make it as easy as possible for the oil and gas giants to make as much money as possible out of the North Sea, they still have not gone and done lots of new exploration in there because they know it's not going to make them lots of money. They can go get that oil and gas cheaper elsewhere. And it's just a really unfair on British bill payers to pretend to them that we've got this easy solution when it's not going to help them at all. Even if we subsidized massively all of those energy giants to get as much oil and gas out of the North Sea as they could, which would cost us a lot of money, right? Even if we did that, it wouldn't help our bills at all because all of that oil and gas, the moment it comes out of the ground, it belongs to the energy giants. And therefore, we don't benefit from it because it's bought and sold at international prices. So I would say to everyone at home, ignore the politically partisan attacks against renewables. They have saved you money, and they are the only way to protect your kids from a future of flash flooding and wildfires, of catastrophic consequences for bills and wages and jobs, because our economy obviously depends on our physical environment.
Richard, you make a very good case there. I'm not sure. I'd have to do a bit of fact-checking on things like the geological beds and the fact that actually these oil and gas companies have for a long time been banned from exploratory drilling as well. But it's always good to have an open debate about these things. I'm still going to buy my Drill Baby Drill baseball cap and wear it proudly down to the local pub. But there you go. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have your company. Yeah, I mean, look, I just think we were promised... The bare basics of this is you've got to have continuity when it comes to a grid. France has it because of nuclear. We got rid of all our nuclear. We have just had a hodgepodge, completely sort of loosey-goosey energy strategy for decades now, which is why we should be leading the way with having small modular reactors led by Rolls-Royce. That technology should be everywhere in Britain. It should be the envy of the world. Is it? No. Our oil fields and gas fields should be developed, however hard they may be to access, because they are there, and we should tie those to a sovereign wealth fund to boost our economy. And while you're at it, I'd even go for a bit of fracking. Dirty word, though it is, to many a green ear. Right, what are your thoughts on everything we're discussing today? The number to call is 0344499 1000, normal network rate and all that. You can also send me a WhatsApp on that number. Or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. Always like a voice-yo. 8722 is the number to send a text message. Write the word talk before you send a text. We're going to be taking a short break. After that, we're going to titillate ourselves with the latest ruling from some sort of immigration lawyer of why somebody can't be deported. Is it about the chicken nuggets? Is it about the human rights of a paedophile who can't be sent back to Zimbabwe because they, I don't know, they don't really like child sexual abuse over in Africa? I'll wait till you hear what this one is. We're going to be discussing that with the brilliant David Shipley just after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There I was, wanting to get down and dirty with the geological bed of North Sea oil after Richard Paraside was talking to us about the fact that it's actually different in Norway as it is in the UK. Turns out, well, kind of not. Turns out that actually it's exactly the same major geological basin, but we've actually extracted more over the course of years than Norway, so we have to go a bit deeper. But also the way that we have approached that in terms of investment in the infrastructure to extract fossil fuels. But otherwise, in terms of the bed, well, it's the same stuff, some sort of clay called something or the other, and it was on my phone a few minutes ago, but I can't remember what it said. I'm not a geologist. Anyway, shall we do a call before we move on to talk about some crime? Let's speak to Bob in Ludlow. Good morning, Bob.
Morning, Alex. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, trogging on, sir.
Hey, that's what we got to do, huh?
Absolutely. This chap Saeed that you just had on.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just absolutely typical of the Labour gaslighting and the Emperor's New Clothes faction that we've had for the last 30 years. I mean, basically, this whole thing about the different geology and all the rest of it is crap, in all honesty. You know, I mean, when Ted Heath issued the licences back in, I think it was 72 or something, originally with the oil companies, even though he gave them tax breaks until I think it was 78 or 79, they didn't turn around and say, oh, well, you know, we're not really going to be able to do it because the geology's too bad. They were in there, they pumped it out, and when Maggie Thatcher came to power in 79, she started getting all the tax revenue from these oil fields, which basically made us independent. Energy-wise, etc., along with our nuclear program at the time. But since Blair and well, actually since John Major, to be honest, we have decimated our energy production for independence and security. And this is why we're in the crap we're in now, paying these bills that we're paying. All these renewables are only any good if they're backed up by the fossil fuel changeover. And you don't just stop it overnight and expect renewables to take over.
No, there you go. Look, I'm no expert in all of this, but funny, isn't it, for, you know, the left wing? They're so anti-gas, but they do love a bit of gaslighting. There's a pun in there somewhere, am I right? Bob, thank you so much for your call, and thank you for those extra little factoids. OK, now let's talk about one of our favourite topics here on this station, which is the madness, the ever-increasing madness of our judicial system, particularly when it comes to law and order. Now, first I'm going to treat you with a story about an Albanian drug dealer, 38 years old. Now, he's not going to be deported. Why, you say? He's a drug dealer. He's been in and out of prison. He's a hard-nosed crook. He came into this country illegally to become a violent gangster. So why would we want to keep him here? Well, apparently, because his daughter wets the bed. Right. Make that make sense. Let's speak now to David Shipley, investigative journalist and, of course, a former prisoner. David, great to have you back on the programme. Now, here we go. The latest ridiculous, farcical, risible ruling. There's some hard-nosed crook who's come to this country specifically for the purpose of committing crime, is going to stay in the country because these immigration lawyers, they just find they will comb through everything to find the one thing that they think they can use to win on behalf of these ne'er-do-wells. And OK, his poor wee daughter has a problem wetting the bed, and apparently this exacerbated while her father was in prison. You can imagine that. But come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually worse than that, by the way, because he arrived in the country 20-odd years ago, claimed to be a Kosovan refugee. So even lied when he arrived, he's actually Albanian. And then has obviously, you know, spent a life doing crime here. He was a cocaine dealer. Now, I'm doing a PhD where I'm researching the impact of parental imprisonment on kids, and it can be really bad for them. It can disrupt them. But frankly, that's the fault of their father who's just gone to prison for doing a crime, you know, and like he should have some responsibility for that. And obviously, we can't keep saying, oh, we can't deport this criminal because it would make someone sad, which is essentially what we're doing here. It's an insane way to run a country.
It is an insane way to run a country, and you kind of think, well, you know, I don't know. I do feel sorry for the children of, you know, violent offenders, but there's lots of children out there who have absent parents, have all the, you know, life is not easy, and like you said, it's this suicidal empathy, and it's the illegal immigration industrial complex, quite frankly. These lawyers who must be making an absolute packet because they always manage to find the one stupid little loophole that some, you know, leftist liberal elite judge is going to sort of read and go, well, you know, because I want to seem nice, because these things don't affect me, because this man isn't likely to move into some sort of hostel on my street, we better let him stay.
Yeah, and also it's often the, if you actually look at the background of immigration tribunal judges, they've often been immigration activists and then immigration lawyers. That's the normal career path. So these are activists who become judges to keep pushing their ideology.
Now, a rape victim has urged Andy Burnham to ban sex offenders from early prison release. This is Charlotte McQueen, 29 years old, and she's basically said that the review of the early release scheme isn't enough. She wants him to commit to ensuring no sex offenders and violent criminals would leave prison early under sentencing reforms. Now, he did on Thursday announce he was going to pause the scheme and conduct a review. Miss McQueen herself, who waived her rights to anonymity, was 9 when countless rapes by her brother Andrew began. They continued until she was 13. She was her case was heard, and her assailant, her brother, pleaded guilty to 5 counts of rape at Gloucester Crown Court last year. I mean, this stuff is commonsensical, surely. The idea that people have commit sort of, you know, crimes that really do have a huge victim impact, crimes where it is dangerous, where it has been, you know, where there's a physicality to it, not white-collar crimes, not a bit of fraud, not putting something on social media that is unpleasant or politically incorrect, but people who are able and sort of thus wired that, because most of us wouldn't want to go and sexually abuse somebody. The sort of people you think, can they really be rehabilitated? And it seems to me that under the ever-boiling pot that is the criminal justice system, the huge wait times for court hearings, the lack of spaces on the prison estate, we've got to such a level of desperation that the spigot's just been opened and there doesn't seem to be much discrimination into who's being let out early.
Yeah, and I think if you cast your mind back 2 years ago when Labour had just come into power, they said we're going to have these emergency releases. At that time, they were very careful to say we're not going to release sex offenders, we're not going to release killers, we're not going to, you know, they carved out the worst criminals, the most dangerous criminals, and said we're not releasing them, which was the right choice. And then, as this new law was put into place, clearly, I suspect civil servants within the Ministry of Justice have realised they need to bring the numbers down even more because the prison building programs are still a disaster. And so we've had sex offenders, child abusers, killers have all been sort of folded back into this earlier release scheme. And it's supposed to kick in September. That's been triggered by secondary legislation. So Andy Burnham can pause that. But the problem he's got is in November, the prisons are going to run out of space. So he either has to go ahead with these sorts of releases, and actually once you take out, I think it's about 2,500 sex offenders and, of various kinds who are going to qualify for these schemes, once you take those out, that's 2,500 spaces they're expecting to have in the prison system they won't have. So he either has to do something very imaginative and different, or he's going to be the PM who released the rapists.
I want to ask you about one more story. It's not on our list today, but I'm sure you'll be well acquainted with it because it made a bit of noise over the course of the weekend with some headlines. And every now and then I get really frustrated with my side of politics for doing the sort of things that the left do. And it was sort of sensationalised clickbait. That was my assessment of this. When I saw the story about Axel Rueda-Cabana is being moved to Broadmoor, he's gamed the system, he's now going to live a life of luxury. And I'm pleased to see, actually, an article, I think it was in the Mail today, saying that is not what goes on in Broadmoor. He's more likely to be surrounded by some of the most sickest, disturbed people, of which he probably is one. And it's probably more padded cell than it is playing on PlayStation. I don't know whether you're across this and know anything about that, because, you know, I weirdly, in my sort of strange tastes in reading, one of my favourite books is by a woman called Gwen Adshead, who is a psychiatrist at Broadmoor, and it goes through case by case and what life is like inside that secure mental facility for the hardest, most disturbed criminals, frankly, that this country has ever seen. And so because I read a lot about it, when I saw those headlines, I was like, I don't think this is accurate. What is your take on that story?
Yeah, I think Broadmoor is not, of course, not a pleasant place to be. I think it does have a couple of advantages for someone like Rudy Cabana over the prisons he's been in, that he will not be constantly trying to avoid being murdered by other prisoners. So it might be slightly physically safer for him. But yeah, he'll probably spend a large amount of his time, you know, dosed up on antipsychotics and not in a particularly coherent state. That being said, I think he probably, my belief is he has tried to manipulate the situation. He certainly has a track record of claiming mental illness is behind his behaviour. I know that prison officers who worked closely with him at Frankland and at Belmarsh, where he was most recently, did not think that he was in any way mentally unwell, not psychotic. And I think the suspicion is that he may have put stuff on for the psychiatrist. I think my view on this, which I've made sort of plain in writing and online over the last few days, is that I think for this kind of man whose guilt is beyond doubt, whose crime is particularly sadistic, and for whom there's no potential in any realistic world of rehabilitation, that we should bring back execution. Neither prison for 50 years or a hospital for 50 years are a sensible use of resources or energy.
And it sounds to me, though, that Vikram Digwar is not going to be facing a nice life inside. He's in a high-security prison, and as far as I understand, there's a bit of a target on his back.
Yeah, no, there is, of course, and I think any high-profile killer, particularly if they're sort of seen to have done a morally, what is it within prison, a morally dubious crime, so particularly if they've attacked children, will be a target. And our high-security long-term estate is very unstable, very dangerous. It's not particularly well policed. So there are regular attacks on other prisoners and also on staff. So yes, someone like Vikram Digwar is going to be having a very, very unpleasant time.
Thank you ever so much, David. It is always so lovely to catch up with you. And, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? We all fall in different parts of the spectrum when it comes to rehabilitation of prisoners, death penalty, all the rest of it. And it just goes to show these things are often extremely nuanced. There isn't always black and white. There isn't always this sense of moral indignation. But there you go. We do what we do. OK, let's take a short break now. When we come back, we're going to be picking back up on the horrific story over the weekend of the attack on the Pride March, the terror attack in Berlin. Oh, my goodness. Like, all the social media on this, they're all going, you know, we've got to stand as one with the LGBTQI+ community. Oh, let's get out our rainbow flags. Oh, we mustn't let the politics of hate, people who dislike our values, we're going to stand up against this because they're the fundamental founding principles of blah, blah, blah. None of them have used the word Islamist. None of them. No one's actually said, oh, this is a Muslim terrorist. And when you talk about the people who don't share our values, perhaps you should look at where they come from and what religion they follow. Oh, no, can't do that in the woke hierarchy victim blimmin' charts. Anyway, we're going to be revisiting that, but also talking about how, and this is a mad story, a charity that has been accused of essentially being an Iranian propaganda unit has got skilled worker visa rights. That's right. They're able to bring anyone they like over to go and do their bidding. This clown world we live in. Jake Wallace-Simons joins us just after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In the battle of who's responsible for the timings going awry earlier, I've now decided it's all Ted's fault. Am I right on that? Yes. He's sitting in there, side of my studio, having a nice gossip, twirling around on the swivelly chair, and also we're being counted back. He's, oh well, better go and sit in the gallery again. Think you better had some. Anyway, right. Let us talk now about well, let's talk about Islamism. Let's talk about the attack on that Pride Festival. Let's talk about the spread of Islamism and how essentially we're giving people associated with Iran visas. I mean, they don't just need to smuggle in IRGC operatives through illegal routes. Why don't you just hand out actual skilled workers visas so these people can do your propaganda? This mad existence that we have to lead in the United Kingdom. Let's speak to the brilliant Jake Wallace-Simons, journalist and author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed Jews and Itself. Always good to catch up with you, Jake.
Hi, good morning.
Now, here we go. The same old performance. You could get a bingo card, couldn't you? And wait after there's a terror attack of all the sort of tropes that are going to come out. Don't let this divide us. Stand up for our values and our freedoms. The one I've seen the most of, which is just balmy, is all the people on the left who've gone, See, this terror attack, oh no, not a terror attack, this randomly motivated attack on gay people is exactly why we still need Pride festivals. And it's like, no, you're kind of missing the point. This is exactly why we need to control our borders and crack down on Islamism. What is wrong with these people, Jake?
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen this unfold over a great many years. I was a foreign reporter for the Daily Mail back in 2015. And the two stories I was covering then was the migration crisis, as it was called, when hundreds of thousands of mainly young men were coming into Europe via unpoliced borders. And we all remember that. And the other concurrent story I was covering was the terror attacks, which were happening at the same time. I was there on the ground for the Bataclan attack, for the Nice attack, for the Berlin attack, the Stockholm attack, the Brussels attack, the one in Istanbul, the one in Sri Lanka, and all of those. I've seen the blood on the ground, and I've seen it firsthand, the tragedy, the panic, the manhunts. And the thing that I have taken from all of that experience is that we still haven't woken up. We should have woken up then, when we were allowing hundreds of thousands of undocumented young men freely into Europe and into Britain as a consequence, with that kind of Angela Merkel slogan of "we can do this." Well, I'm afraid they took the same lesson. They can do whatever they want in our society, and we should have woken up then. We should have woken up when that spate of terror attacks linked to Islamic State was happening almost every week. And even today, we're not facing the threat head on. Now, I think the main message we need to take from this is that facing the threat of jihadism on our shores doesn't make us racist. I mean, you can't repeat that enough. Talking the truth about Islamic terror, Islamist terror, and radicalism and jihadism in Britain and Europe doesn't make you racist. It just makes you sane. It makes you somebody who wants to stand up against terror and fascism, neo-fascism, conservative Islamist fascism, against the forces of liberalism and pride and decency. And the main victims around the world of jihadism are Muslims, let's not forget. So it's not like we're against Muslims, we're just against being killed, which is fair enough, I think.
But the mad thing is, the whole of the Western world needs to change tack on how we're going to deal with this problem, in my opinion. And I think what happened in Berlin and the background of the killer is a really good example. It's sort of paradigmatic of the problem that we have, because somehow in the West we think if we bring in mad jihadists and people from these medieval cultures, the minute they land on the beaches of Dover, they somehow become British Christians and, you know, want to join pride marches, wear gimp masks, Lord knows what. But it doesn't really work like that, does it? With the killer, with the Berlin killer, my understanding is Abdul Balut, who was basically born, well, not born, but brought up in Lebanon. I think he was sort of brought up in Germany. He had decided he wanted to be a terrorist. He was well known in what's called the Islamist scene in Berlin, and he had run off to the Middle East to go and join the Islamic State. But then Germany's like, no, we're going to have to arrest you in Lebanon, bring you back over here to face punishment for doing that. So he was sentenced to 3 months in prison, in part for incitement to religious and sectarian conflict. Anyway, he's then released from prison and told, right, you've got to go do the German equivalent of prevent. Come and sit down, sing Kumbaya, learn to be a good person. So he does 2 of the lessons. The third one he doesn't turn up for because he's gone out to commit a jihadi attack instead. We've got to get, haven't we, the fact in our head that these people are brought up with such a toxic ideology, hammered into them from such a young age, they're beyond redemption. They are critically dangerous. They cannot be magically healed by having some sort of sit-down chatteroo, and they certainly shouldn't be wandering our streets.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that this man should not have been Germany's problem. It shouldn't have been up to Germany to try and sit him down and de-radicalise him. He shouldn't have been in Germany in the first place. But I think that there's one element of research which is really helpful to understand all this. There was a couple of neuroscientists, Scott Barry Kaufman and Craig Newman, who did a bit of research last year over, I think, 73 countries, 200,000 people. And what they found is that people who've been brought up in authoritarian regimes, so not in free societies like ours, have a far higher preponderance of 3 qualities known as the dark triad, which are psychopathy, narcissism and Machiavellianism. So just by being brought up and growing up in an authoritarian country, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Iran or anywhere else, North Korea or China, you're much more likely to be a psychopath, a narcissist, or to be Machiavellian. And we have the opposite in our free society. We have the light triad of humanism and Kantian and empathy. And so you can see how our empathy is being exploited by people who are essentially brought up in such a way that causes them to develop culturally these very dark qualities indeed. And we're being exploited by these people. It's not to do with race, it's to do with culture, democratic culture, political culture and upbringing. And unfortunately, it means that we are gullible when it comes to these people, and we're still not learning the lessons. How much blood is there going to be on our streets before we wake up and look at the science? People talk about the science all the time, and just look at the hard reality and realize that in order to protect our people, whatever race, color or creed they are, against those radicals, narcissists, psychopaths and Machiavels, we need to get much tougher than we are to protect ourselves for the benefit of all the citizens living here, and call an enemy and begin to defend ourselves against them.
Fascinating stuff, actually. I'm going to look into that even more when I come off air.
It's in my book. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant. I love that sort of stuff, the sort of social psychology. Now, talking about madness, what is going on with this skilled worker visa system? The latest farcical manifestation is that a charity, the Islamic Centre of England, based in Maida Vale, has the powers to sponsor visas for skilled workers and religious ministers. Oh, that sounds nice, doesn't it? They're definitely not going to be people who are part of the dark triad. Well, turns out, actually, that they've been accused of being, in part, working on behalf of Iran's propaganda machine in the UK. It was flagged to the charity watchdog earlier this year for hosting a community bazaar where items were being sold, such as pro-Iranian keyrings, Hezbollah-themed phone cases. Well, how delicious is that? At the same time, we know that 159 kebab shops have given out skilled worker visas, an Islamic bookshop, which involves having texts on the shelves for sale, how to beat up your wife. And then we know with skilled workers visas as well that Pakistanis bring 6 times more dependents than anybody else, 7 people for every worker. I mean, we know that IRGC are pumping people into our, streets around the country to directly threaten us through illegal routes. They needn't have bothered. We'll just give them visa application forms and pay them to bring these nasty elements over.
Yeah, I mean, the Islamic Centre of England, when I saw that, the name of that institution, my heart sank immediately, because it's well known to me. It's well known to any journalist who's been covering this. It's well known to the authorities and the Charity Commission, of course, because it's been named in Parliament as the Ayatollah's HQ in Britain. I mean, that's what it is. It reports directly to the Ayatollah in terms of the regime structure. It's outside of normal structures. It's directly reporting to the Ayatollah's office, as far as I understand it. I believe it held a vigil for the Ayatollah after he was killed. And at that time, it was so ironic because the Ayatollah had been killed in his compound, in his his office in Iran, and yet his office in London was still open and thriving. It's long been known as a suspected hotbed of extremism and radicalism, and an outpost of the Iranian regime. And so quite why it's even open, let alone having the ability to bring in skilled workers from countries unknown, is totally beyond me. And I think it can only be described. I mean, I don't know if you follow Gad Saad on Twitter, on X, but I had him on my podcast recently, which is called The Brink, by the way, and he's got this phrase, suicidal empathy, and that just says it all. Suicidal empathy is allowing the Ayatollah's office in London to remain open, to remain flourishing, and then to bring over skilled workers to staff it up. That's suicidal empathy in a nutshell.
It really is. I love Gad Saad. He's like my sort of like philosophical pin-up of this era. Talking about suicidal empathy, what about our new Solicitor General? That's right, the man who's going to be responsible for deciding, I suppose, which organisation are prescribed and which ones are not. Turns out that he used to hang out with Jeremy Corbyn, went on a fact-finding mission to the Palestinian territories sponsored by the Friends of Al-Aqsa, and was tooling around, shaking hands with all sorts of ne'er-do-wells from Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that if you were scripting an episode of The Thick of It, and you thought, what should we call this Attorney General who has been hanging out with Hamas? I know, let's call him Andy Slaughter. I mean, that is actually his name, Andy Slaughter. And he was hanging out by Hamas, with Hamas. And again, he's somebody who journalists who've been around the block a few times are familiar with for a long, long time. He's a key ally of Jeremy Corbyn through the Corbyn years. He's had controversy after controversy. You can look him up on Google. I won't go into all of it now, but him meeting with Hamas all those years ago is really indicative, I think, of a lot that's wrong with the further reaches of the Labour Party. And it just goes to show that Andy Burnham is trying, as centrist as he might be, and as comfortable as he is with doing TikTok videos rather than working to run the country, he's still got to appease the radical ideologues occupying the left wing of his party, what Kemi Badenoch calls his backbenchers euphemistically. So those are people with Islamist sympathies, people with radical revolutionary ideology like Jeremy Corbyn, who wish to overturn capitalism and replace it with the Marxism, which is responsible for so many millions of deaths over the generations. People like that. And Andy Burnham putting this man in that position seems to be throwing some red meat, if we can call it that, to that left wing of the party. Labour is always going to be Labour, even if you've got a relative centrist. He's still a socialist. Look at his tax policies and everything else. He's still a socialist, but he's got to appease the radicals as well. So I'm afraid that Labour, as much as I want to hope that Labour's going to do a good job, it's looking bad, not just from the point of view of Number 10, but also the compromises he has to make with the outer wings of his party as they hemorrhage support to the Greens and seek to shore up that.
It's interesting, isn't it? It almost feels like an upgrade, though, compared to a Prime Minister and here's a directly appointed Attorney General whose client list read like the who's who of our very enemies, the IRA, Shamima Begum, you name it. They were all in there, weren't they?
Like
in
out of the fire into the fire, isn't it? Yeah.
It's craziness. It's craziness. This has been going on for far too long. The dark arts at the heart of our current government. I've got to do a statement. A spokesman for the Attorney General's office said appointments to the government are carefully considered by the Prime Minister. The Solicitor General will carry out his duties, including any role in oversight of prosecutorial decisions, with the political impartiality and adherence to the rule of law that the role demands. The Solicitor General has been consistent in condemning the actions of Hamas and has long supported a two-state solution in which a viable Palestinian state and Israel can live in peace side by side. Oh, yeah, that old bump, because all the Palestinians really want a two-state solution, don't they?
Well, Alex, I, for one, feel totally reassured by that. I take it all back.
Jake, it's always great catching up with you. Thank you ever so much, Jake Wallace-Simons there. Now, listen, after the break, it'd be great to have a chit-chat with some of you. So if you want to add your name to the list, this is the number to dial, 0344 499 1000. It's your normal network rate. Doesn't cost you anything. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. I like a little audio biscuit from time to time. It's like having a minute-long nap with a countdown. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. If you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you type out the contents of your message. We're going to be taking a short break now. But after that, this is where democracy still lives. It's an open floor for you to say what you like. That's why we're called Talk. We're back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Do you know, this is my favourite bit of the show, because this is when I don't do the talking, you do it instead. And we've got a brand new caller on the line in the form of Charlotte, who's in Kent. Good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you? What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I was listening to your shows and I think they're amazing, so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
I've been gradually listening now, I sort of watch. The reason I'm calling, just quick and simple, is obviously I listen every morning to Long Clock Britain, and I worked since I was 18. I've just turned 52, and I'm about to go in for a knee replacement due to an injury at work. And for the first time ever, I've had to give up work and go on to the benefit system, which, trust me, it is, I found extremely hard. But I think the point is that I found so hard is, if you have worked all your life and you have contributed, it's actually harder to try and get any help out of the system you've put into. And I'm now in a situation where I'm 4 days away from a major operation, and I pay tax on my benefits, and I get a very small civil service pension, and I'm paying tax on that. And HMRC tell me that it's because I have two jobs. What I'm trying to say is, I listen and I feel guilty that I'm not working, and I'm at a state of my life where, for now, I can't work. But it's just really interesting that if you have worked and you have contributed, one, you get spoken to like, you must understand this system, and I don't understand the benefit system. And two, then they turn around and say, but we're going to tax you as well on it. So, I mean, I'm barely getting by on what I have. But I just think there's probably a lot of people out there, probably similar to me, that have done jobs that have taken a toll on their bodies, and then you get to the stage where you have to accept you can't work. And you feel really terribly guilty for it because you have put in. But actually, trust me, being on some of these benefits, it is more degrading than it ever is beneficial.
Yeah, this is the thing, because there is such a dichotomy in all of this. It sounds to me, Charlotte, like you've got what I'd call the Protestant sort of work ethic, the guilt for not waking up in the morning and going to work.
Yeah,
it's probably quite depressing as well when you're used to productivity, used to getting out the house, used to having purpose and function and that community and the socialising of having a job. Suddenly being laid low is horrible. It's hard.
It is horrible, and I think you lose your friendships through it because you have less to talk about. It certainly affects my sort of mental well-being, I think. I just whenever I hear that sort of alarm clock Britain, I always feel guilty because I think I'm not getting up for work at the moment. Hopefully, maybe I might be able to go back to some part-time work eventually. But the fact is, trust me, I am scraping by literally on the bare minimum, and it's beans on toast in this house. It's certainly not, slap up meals and going out.
And this is the thing, isn't it? We do have a system that punishes those people who follow the rules, and yet there are people who know exactly how to exploit those systems. There are people who've never done a day's work in their lives, especially among that 16 to 24-year-old cohort who are lazy. They're lazy, they're feckless, they're lazy. They don't want to work, they have had everything given to them, they're used to having instant gratification. I want a takeaway, I can order it right now. I'm bored, well look at these 5,000 different channels I get to choose from. Oh, I need a new smartphone, I want a Motability car. We have become such a soft system that if you actually learn the roots around it, you really can, take the proverbial. But if it's someone like you, who's never done that, who's always been part of the working system, always been a contributor, you suddenly find yourself in this labyrinthine, entity that it's really hard to navigate your way through it. But also what you're saying is so important because it also points to another two things. Number one, it's the fact that actually psychologically work is extremely beneficial. We seem to have forgotten this in society. We seem to have taken the route of, your cat's died, you probably need a month of compassionate leave. Your cat's died, go to work and try and forget about it for a wee small moment, all right? It's sad, nobody likes it when their pet is, 6 foot under, but guess what? Sitting at home under your slanket ain't going to bring it back to life. So there's that element of it. But also the other thing is the waiting lists now to have things like knee replacements, to have joint surgeries. It's insane. My mum's, she definitely needs a new knee, that woman. Instead, they're trying to make her do like 85 different versions of physiotherapy because they just don't want her on the waiting list. I'm like, the joints have gone wrong. She can, stretch her muscles as much as she likes. It ain't going to fix itself. We just live in a society where money is being distributed in all the wrong places to people who don't deserve it, and then people who've contributed all their life who need that as an insurance policy. They've paid their taxes, they've fallen on hard times, they wish they could be productive, are essentially made to live in misery. And none of it seems fair. We need a radical overhaul, and at the fundamental heart of all of that has got to be two words: get real. Charlotte, I'm so glad you called for the first time. May I wish you all the success in getting mobile, in getting that operation done. May I wish you an extremely quick recovery, and I hope that you get back out there and can do the things you love as soon as physically possible. Thank you ever so much to Charlotte. Let's speak to Daniel, who's in Epsom. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm very well, my love. How are you doing?
Well, I'm kind of deeply concerned that we're turning into some form of socialist banana republic.
Oh, concerned we're turning into, or that we have become it already?
Yeah. I wrote to Prince William and King Charles and just said, look, I don't think it's right that anybody, any party is able to change the way that we vote and the political system. Let's give under 16-year-olds a vote. Let's go to PR. Let's change it this way. Let's change it that way. Once you've started to play the game, the rules have to be the same. Okay? If you say, well, vote for me and I'll change the way that we count up the votes, then that's fine because you've got a mandate to do it. But if you haven't got a mandate to do it, you can't. I don't think it's right from any political standpoint, just making it up on the fly, Alex. I don't think it's right.
Oh, I'm with you. But also remember that, the alternative to that is referenda. And that is probably the moment that democracy really did die. The fatal blow to the plebiscite in this country was in 2016, when we actually were told you get to choose. You get to choose on this big issue, and it's going to be a totally free, fair and open referendum. Well, it wasn't, was it? You had the government itself using our taxpayers' money to put leaflets at everyone's door saying that the sky's going to fall in economically if we voted to leave the EU. We had 4 years of people refusing to accept that referendum result, trying to overturn it, trying to make out we needed to go back to the polls. And now, 10 years later, has Brexit been done? Not even a whiff. And we've got a government trying to drag us all the way back into the regulatory orbit of Brussels without any say whatsoever. And of course, this is the same political establishment that tried to cancel local elections until a private prosecution meant that they had to run those. 5 million people would have been disenfranchised if that hadn't been overturned. As you said, they changed the way the voting system works in Wales. Did they ask the people? No. They're giving votes to 16-year-olds. Did they ask the people? No. They will do this over and over again. And look, the left wing, I think, are especially bad at this. They hate democracy. They wish it didn't exist. They're communists at heart. And frankly, unfortunately, the common man having a voice kind of gets in the way of their agenda to create global socialism. But the right wing, in fact, the Conservative Party are equally culpable. They stood by the Labour Party in the cancellation of those local elections. They're the ones who like to gerrymander constituencies as well. Both sides do this, and quite frankly, I'm sick of it. But the problem we have now is that exercise in democratic manipulation has become so audacious, we've almost become sort of used to it. It's become normalised ever since the lack of discipline, the lack of actually accountability after Brexit. We were told, weren't we, as voters, your voice doesn't matter, elections don't matter, whatever you vote, whatever you choose, we will zig if you're going to zag, we'll do what we want to do, you're an inconvenience. And so, yeah, when I look at Burnham's plots and plans to keep the left in power, I can see them, I predicted them. We've got to stay alert to this, we've got to be alive to what they may do. Daniel, thank you ever so much for your call. We're going to be taking a short break now, but when we come back, there's still one more hour to go. After this, we're joined by the brilliant Lord Redwood. See you in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
How are you doing? I've really enjoyed the last 2 hours. Thank you for sticking with. We've got one more to go, and well, after that, 6 more shows in a row. I'm going to be burnt out by the end of this week, much like our economy, because I think we're beginning to understand what Burnhamomics Burnamomics. We're going to understand what it looks like, which is burning a hole through our treasury, it seems. I mean, look, some of the things he's announcing, bits and bobs, I kind of like some of them. I'm not going to lie. I like to be candid with you. What I don't like, however, is all of these unfunded pledges and some of the more radical things that we're hearing leaked out that he might want to do. Oh, yeah, just let's casually get rid of all of council tax and change it with a property and land tax. Eh? That wasn't in your... What? That wasn't in the manifesto. That's a bit radical, son. We're not going to get an election on that thing? No. How much is that going to cost? Well, don't ask. Never ask how much it's going to cost. These are socialists, after all. Well, let's have a little look at the sort of things he's announced already. You know, the sort of what Andyism, Andy for us, what Andyism's all about. Now, the things he's done already, reducing bus fares to £2. Ironically, it was the Conservative Party who capped them at that, and Sir Keir Starmer put it up to £3, so he's just reversing it. Good. I quite like that. If you live in a rural area, you're elderly, or you have a low-paid job and you need to take the bus, then that might help a little bit. Cutting the VAT on electricity. OK, that seems like a good idea as well. Doesn't really go far enough when you've got mad net zero zealots still running the energy policy. Only going to save people about £1 a blimmin' month, if that. Business rates being reduced on hospitality. Again, great, but you've got hospitality into a mess in the first place with the massive VAT on alcohol, with all the changes to workers' rights, increase in employers' national insurance, and you were the ones who whacked those business rates up, weren't you, Ms. Reeves? And this only going to come in, you know, spring next year, by which point pubs are shutting at the rate of knots. So these tiny little sops that have been given out, this mood music, these sort of little clickbait moments that are supposed to make us all think Andy Burnham is suddenly the saviour of our time. Well, are they what they purport to be? Either way, they cost £1.7 billion. Now, in the grand scheme of things, coins down the back of the sofa. Sounds a lot, but, well, not as much, for instance, as creating adult social care, which annual cost alone, if we were going to create an adult social care service, is estimated to be £18.7 billion. Other things we desperately need to do, the increase in defence spending, just to meet that paltry, little, tiny threshold of finally reaching 3% of GDP by 2030, our commitment to NATO. Well, that costs an extra £10 billion a year. When you add up all these things, the increase in foreign aid, of course, Ed Miliband's going to be overseeing that. Good luck. Hold on to your blimmin' shrap. Miliband's about. That's soon going to be sent to some sort of mad banana republic to, I don't know, have some sort of cultural dancing in aid of climate change. £8 billion increase in that. Something else that Andy Pandy has said he wants to do is buy back all the utilities, bring them under public ownership so they learn to behave themselves. You know, that miscreant Thames Water haven't really been running their water services very well. Well, if you just wanted to bring them under public control, it's a whopping £22.7 billion. For the lot of it, you're looking at about £250 billion, and that's without all the sort of pensions obligations. I mean, it all sounds very good, doesn't it? Oh, hold on, I forgot one. The biggest council house building programme since the post-war period. That's about £19 billion. I mean, Andy, mate, when Rachel Reeves said that we were in some sort of economic doom loop and it was going to be hard and tough decisions had to be made and, you know, despite being able to lift the two-tard benefit cap and add more to the welfare bill, she still managed to create £23.6 billion in fiscal headroom. That's down to £10 billion. Poor John Healey is going to have some pretty mad super calculator over summer if Andy Pandy's supermarket sweep rush to sort of introduce 1,000 different policies we never knew were in train is ever going to come to pass. Let's speak now to a man who does know how to add up, a man who'd probably be far better at being our Chancellor than John Healey, if only we should be so lucky, the brilliant Lord Redwood. Always great to have you on the show, John. Talk to me about Burnhamomics. Can we afford it?
Well, good morning, Alex. Great to hear your common sense and some good mental arithmetic there. As you say, this man is offering everything and doesn't know how to pay for any of it. Billions of extra promises and vague hints. I think he's just trying to change the mood and show that he could be a really nice guy. But of course, as Prime Minister, you don't have to just suggest something good is going to happen, but you have to actually make it happen and you have to pay for it. And that's where, of course, Mr. Burnham will find he meets reality and people get very cross. with promises that don't materialise or promises they have to pay for with another tax rise. I mean, the last lot, Reeves and Starmer, managed to put £1,000 of extra tax on every man, woman and child on average in the country, and a lot more on those who are actually paying the bills. And now this man comes along and says, you know what, the big problem with Starmer and Reeves, they didn't spend enough, they didn't tax enough, and we're going to have all sorts of ways of taxing the so-called rich. What he means is the half of the country that does make a net tax contribution, the half of the country that gets up in the morning and goes to work and has to pay all those taxes, the half of the country that has saved and bought their own home and thought that when they paid the mortgage off, they would then have the benefits. And these are the people now that he wants to put in his sights to pay even more tax, to give free gifts to recently arrived migrants and to people who don't get up and get out and go to work, but have managed to get a sick note for life.
I mean, it's true. The IMF warned us, or warned the Labour Party when they first came into power, that we are too big to bail out, that we run a structural deficit that is teetering on the edge of oblivion, and that we really needed to do something about the welfare bill, which is currently standing, I believe, at £333 billion per annum. We've got to the stage now we give more to people who aren't earning money than we take from people who do. The difficulty is 120 backbenchers in the Labour Party, when Sir Keir Starmer said we need to reform welfare, said, no, you don't. You can't do this. But Andy Burnham is making some positive noises. He's talking about young people who aren't in work, education or employment having to be proving they're doing something or they will lose their benefits. He might visit, for example, the idea that you can get PIP payments for supposed mental health conditions. I mean, we got to give him credit. At least there are some little glimmers of hope that there are things that have gone terribly, drastically, farcically wrong in our system, and he might try and unpick some of it. Or am I being too generous?
Well, you're right that he's beginning to say some of the right things on benefits, but it's very cautious and there's still no worked out plan. And what a Prime Minister has to understand is that before he engages his mouth and makes a promise, he needs to have done the homework with the civil service and the ministries, and he needs to launch a proper policy. And Kemi Badenoch spent 6 months saying very little to work out a proper policy on how to find the extra money by changing the benefit system, and worked out how 23 billion of savings could be made without harming those who are really ill and disabled and need the support. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just adopt that? Because we've done the work for him. I'm very happy to collaborate with him, but that's a step too far because he obviously doesn't think his MPs will sign up for that. And these hints that he's going to be tougher in the future on new benefits doesn't tackle the 330 billion you've been talking about that are already going out. It doesn't tackle the thousands or tens of thousands of young people who've already got a sick note for life because they have mild mental difficulties. And as you were rightly saying earlier, quite often work is the best therapy. And if you're young and a bit lonely and you're feeling a bit depressed, you need people to help you into work, which gives you social contact, which gives you a support system, which gives you some interest and something to do, as well as giving you some money in your pocket that you've actually earned. You get more self-respect if you're out there earning your own money rather than living off the state. So come on, Mr. Burnham, we want it bigger, we want it bolder, we want it thought through, and we want it yesterday. And your government has allowed it to drift for 2 years.
I think the main problem I got with Andy Burnham is, and I keep saying this, we're all going to be Winston Smith by the end of his term because he seems obsessed with building out the state. He talks about more and more devolution when the two devolved governments in Wales and Scotland, probably Northern Ireland as well, run a massive deficit. I think both of them, it's 26 billion. 1 in 4 people in Wales are employed by the government, and he wants more pen pushers, more apparatchiks, utilities taken under state control. Soon enough, there will be no jobs unless it's for the government, and that really worries me, the sort of quagmire of bureaucracy that he seems to want to build, the crangocracy that already exists. And when you look at how much people earn in the public sector, well, you can see why it's so attractive. News out today that 574 NHS managers earn more than the Prime Minister. 1,603 earn at least £100,000. 319 between 200 and £300,000. 17 received over £300,000. You would assume on those massive pay packets that NHS has no waiting lists. It's thriving. We've got new hospitals everywhere, sparkling ambulances, cutting-edge technology, a glut of our own trained, homegrown medical staff who haven't all gone to Australia because they're paid better and are treated better over there. You'd think for that level of remuneration, we'd have something to show for it.
Well, you're dead right again. And of course, we've had a working experiment for the last 26 years with devolved government in Wales and Scotland. The bureaucracy has got bigger. The public sector's got a lot dearer. They get more money per head than England does. And they have slower economic growth as a result. The results are in, Mr. Burnham. It doesn't work. People may want it, and I'm a Democrat. If they want it, they get it. But the result is very bad economically. Now, when it comes to the health service in England, again, Labour had started to spot this problem when they took over 2 years ago. And Wes Streeting said he was going to get rid of NHS England and all the very expensive people at the top of that. 2 years on, he hasn't done so. Why? Well, because he was told it would take time. It was very complicated. It probably needs legislation. Above all, because it was going to entail massive redundancy payments, because they not only had too many people on very high salaries, but obviously they then had an entitlement to compensation. You've got to get smarter government to manage this problem out. Yes, you need to negotiate with these people about future bonuses, because they should not be getting bonuses all the time the service is delivering such a poor performance on getting access to it and on the results of some of the treatments. So you've got to have performance-related bonuses, and you've got to manage out too many surplus overpaid managers. And the way you do that is natural wastage. You say, I'm not hiring any more from outside, and as somebody leaves, they retire or they find a better place to go to, you amalgamate posts or you get rid of a post, and so you gradually reduce the numbers. You can cut the cost by 7% a year, roughly, in the public sector. If only they would put that simple ban on new recruitment, but they won't even do that. And so they're not beginning to tackle this problem, and they then face a very big redundancy bill they don't know what to do with.
Years and years, haven't we? We've heard we've got to get rid of all this middle management clogging up the NHS and have more frontline doctors and nurses, and year after year the complete reverse happens. I eliminate devolution. I'm going to say it to you, John. I hate it. I wish it didn't exist. Get rid of that stupid Welsh government, the Senedd. Get rid of all of it. Just a load of pen pushers who make life a misery. You know, 20-mile-per-hour zones and, you know, let's twin with Gaza. It's that sort of rubbish half the time, and we pay for it. These people couldn't even manage the local library for the most part. And then when you look at this whole idea of let's get more and more mayors, that's going to solve the problem. Democracy closer to the people. Well, shall we have a little look, an example of one of these magical mayors that Burnham would like to see propagated around the country? Let's look at the example of a guy called Liam Shrivastava. He's a Green Party mayor. There you go. That's teed it up. You know that bad things are to be expected from a Green Party mayor. Anyway, we've not, you would think, given the stance of old Liam, that we've got ICE running the streets of London, packing people into the back of vans at gunpoint, taking them out to deportation centres, chucking them into a Hercules and dropping them in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Alas not. I don't think we've done any of that yet. And yet, this Green Party mayor has pledged to resist government raids on illegal migrants. He's committed to backing a group that published cartoons of Home Office vans on fire. Well, how lovely. I can't wait to have more of those around the country, John.
No, it's a disgrace, isn't it? And as you rightly say, mayors on the whole haven't been the answer. And of course, people have often been offered a referendum on whether they want a mayor, and they've lost more of those referendums than won them, because a lot of people are very sensible and don't want these elected mayors. There have even been cases where the public fell for it and then voted to get rid of them after they'd experienced them. But from Burnham's point of view, it's another way he set himself up to fail, because not all the country has the regional elected mayors of the kind he wants. It's going to be very divisive if they get a special place around the table and extra money and nobody else does. And he's got to answer the question, well, how are you going to get growth all across the country if so many decisions are going to be taken locally and regionally? Because you're going to get very different outcomes in different places, the very opposite of his promise of growth in every postcode. Well, Mr. Burnham, you're going to need a common policy to drive that. You've got to take responsibility. A few more elected mayors are not going to deliver it for you.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, look, all this sort of devolution, isn't it lovely? As far as I can tell, it's more people, pen pushers and pensions for us to pay for, to make more regulation, to make our lives more miserable. No, thank you. Smaller states, please. Oh, John, please, come back, run the country. We miss you. The brilliant Lord Redwood, former Conservative PM, former Cabinet Minister. The greatest Chancellor that we should have right now, if only. Right. If you've got things you want to say, there is still time to do just that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. If you want to catch up with us on the blower a bit later, the last segment of this hour and indeed of this programme will be all about you. And if you want your voice heard, you just have to call that number at any time. Tell us who you are, give us your details, and we give you a call back. Customer service. You can also use that to send me a WhatsApp message or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is your passport to sending a text message, but you have to write the word talk before you write your message. After the break, we're going to be catching up with a French journalist about those apocalyptic wildfires in the Gironde. My heart goes out. I know the area very well. It is beautiful. I love it. I love the French. I know I might stand alone in that one as an English patriot, but I do. Huge, huge fan of the French. And there is a feel-good factor to this story as well. So do stay tuned. We're going to be talking about the horrible things going on in the southwest of France just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. We are waiting to speak to the wonderful Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, who is a French journalist and who's going to give us the updates on what is going on in southwest France. By the way, if you are an English expat over in France or indeed Spain and you have had to evacuate or cancel your holiday, perhaps let us know. It'd be very interesting to speak to some of you. I know the area super well, actually, the Gironde. It is beautiful. I love it. There's this gorgeous town called La Porge, which has been extremely negatively affected. Now, the southwest of France is on the Atlantic. You get these huge waves that roll into the coast, beautiful sandy beaches where that, you know, the sand is churned up by these massive breakers, surrounded by these gorgeous pine forests. And it's those pine forests that have set alight. It's down near an area as well called Arcachon, which is famous for the Dune de Pilat, which is the biggest sand dune in Europe. Load of oysters in that neck of the woods as well. Anyway, I know that area. And, well, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see somewhere of such natural beauty and such culture go up in flames. And the wildfires became so apocalyptic. They have essentially almost reached Bordeaux. They're just 9 miles from Bordeaux. Bordeaux is a bit like, well, it's not. I was going to say it's a bit like Birmingham. It really isn't. Bordeaux's much better. But it's a big city, OK? You've all heard of it. Famous, of course, for the wine-growing region. Already an area that the size of the Isle of Wight has been... completely decimated. People have been forced from their homes. 225,000 have had to leave from 5 localities. Bordeaux is France's 9th largest city. But I told you there's going to be some sort of slightly heartwarming news in all of this. Honestly, one thing that sort of brought a tear to my eye on social media was watching images of the French farmers from all the local areas, all the surrounding regions, are driving towards the carnage. They're driving towards those flames, wearing breathing equipment, because they've got tankers full of water they would otherwise be using to irrigate their fields, and the French military, they haven't got enough. The firefighters have not been able to get this under control. It's actually created its own weather system now. The wildfires are so apocalyptic, it's actually generating its own cumulus clouds and lightning, which is then in turn exacerbating the fires. But I don't know if you're watching right now, you will see, I love stuff like this, you'll see all those brilliant French farmers driving tractor after tractor after tractor to go and help combat those fires. These are the same farmers, right, who about a year ago were protesting, you know, spraying manure on the EU Commission building. Good for them, love to see it. These are the ones who turn all the road signs in France upside down to protest at how badly they have been treated by the French government. But in the hour of need, they are there. And I think that is utterly, utterly wonderful. So, round of applause to them. Anne-Elizabeth Moutet joins us now. And, I mean, gosh, talk to me. It's heartbreaking to see what is going on in the southwest of France. I'm not sure I've ever seen a story like this affect any region of France to this level. There are lots of other wildfires going on in France right now, but this really has been apocalyptic in scale. Is it now finally perhaps under control?
I don't know whether it's still under control. I mean, there has been, as you've described it so well and with such heart, it's been incredible in terms of bringing people together, and it's been great in terms of at every level of the hospitality being organized by normal citizens, denizens of Bordeaux, for the people who streamed into the city, into convention centers, because they'd fled their homes. All of this is very big, but we don't know whether the weather that is threatening to be yet another, a 4th heat wave, is not going to sort of endanger this again, because that kind of heat wave with temperatures again nearing or going over 40 degrees centigrade is not going to create yet another situation in which anything can take fire. That's the real problem.
Talk to me about the contribution of the farmers as well. I seem to have a strange affliction that tractors make me cry. This has been going on a long time. I don't know why. There's something about agricultural machinery and the men and women who work the land that sort of makes my heart sing. And when I look, the French farmers have been so notoriously badly treated. So much so they have been protesting now for way over a year. And I look at them riding out into the scenes of danger, sacrificing, you know, the water and the equipment they're going to need to irrigate their own fields during extremely hot weather. And I just, you know, I just salute them.
I think we need a French Jeremy Clarkson to really explain how difficult this job is. And instead, we've got green activists who have destroyed, either by lawfare or by just, you know, actual violence. They've destroyed reservoirs that are supposed to be bad for the ecosphere and bad for the nature, and they've forbidden people to cut off the underbrush in forest that is supposed to harbor ecosystems and insects, but basically was there to light up everything. It's like lighting a fire in a wet chimney. You've got this dry, small wood at the bottom, and this is how you light a fire. So there's also a political reckoning in this that should be really taken into account. The farmers have been demonized far more by the Greens in France than they have been demonized by politicians.
And Elizabeth, that is so interesting. I did not know that, okay, about the fact that potentially the cause of these fires could be the blimmin' green environmental policy that, you know, they say, oh, it's all climate change, the world's on fire because, you know, blah, blah, blah. It reminds me of the catastrophic flooding in Valencia in Spain. Oh, nothing to do with the fact that the EU had this policy to get rid of all of the dams that sort of, you know, separate the mountain water runoff from the valley below because some sort of, I don't know, minute little fish probably needs to get from A to B. I had no idea about that.
I mean, it's heavily contested because, you know, you're supposed to say that Greens are wonderful, but they have been harmful to French farmers. They've been harmful to the environment. Their influence is huge because when you have those ministries in charge of the environment and net zero, where do they find their quote-unquote specialists? They always find them among the militant Greens. And so they have infiltrated the thing and invented new norms that have made life more and more difficult for our farmers, for your farmers. And each country is responsible. I mean, Brussels is not a special different place. It's that there has been this sort of fashionable thing and line of least resistance, which is, well, you know, the young people like them and young people are going to vote and therefore we are going to go for net zero and whatever aspect. And now they say, oh, but we've got to save the planet by diminishing carbon gas emissions. But France accounts for less than 1.5% of all worldwide carbon emissions. So whatever you do, it's not going to do very much when you're faced with such a catastrophe.
I am so worried that this is going to have such a huge lasting effect on that region. It's such a hub of tourism, of course, a great wine growing area as well, but the damage looks so catastrophic. I would imagine this is going to take years for, I mean, even the natural land to be able to recover from this level of devastation.
The wine growing country is a bit different because what you've got in the wine growing region is vines. There's great husbandry. They are all in rows. They're separated from one another. So that's not where you get the fire. What you see on the images here, you see those huge pine trees. And pine trees are very resilient trees and very hard trees, but the sap is especially flammable. This sort of viscous, sugary sap of pine trees is exactly what makes it much more. It's like if you had a sort of fire accelerant in the trees themselves. So yes, it's going to take time. Some of those trees are 200 years old, more, and all of this is going to be difficult to sort of claw back from. And same thing south of Paris last week, about 50 miles south of Paris, you've got the Fontainebleau forest, which is the largest forest of the northern part of France, and 1/10 of that was lost to fires. Nobody had seen such fires so close to Paris, and same thing, houses were threatened, people were evacuated. The result is a combination of not enough sort of cutting ruthlessly the underbrush, and the fact that the heat waves have been such that they created all the conditions for anything to take fire. There have been examples of arson. They were not really masterminded by anyone, but you have crazy enough people. Near Fontainebleau, you've got one 18-year-old volunteer fireman who lit fires. You've got crazy people in life. There's nothing that you can do about it. And there are also fires, less important so far, cross fingers, in the southeast, where we're used to seeing fires in Corsica and the Côte d'Azur.
Oh, well, do you know what? I am probably the biggest Francophile in Britain. My heart goes out to our wonderful neighbours on the other side of La Manche. Anne-Elisabeth, thank you so much for joining us today. And do you know what? As soon as everything's cleared up, I'm going to work all summer, and then I'm going to treat myself in the autumn, and I'm going to go to France, and I'm going to spend my good UK pound over there to support them as much as I can, because I blimmin' love that country. And what they're going through right now is definitely not easy. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when we come back... They can't leave anything alone, can they? These mad trans activists. Everything's got to be trans. It wasn't enough to turn around and say that Shakespeare was actually born a woman or some madness like that. No, Care Bears. Care Bears! Care Bears are trans. They're sickos. We're discussing that and some more of the mad things that the trans lobbies are getting up to with the brilliant Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, just after this break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
When are we going to actually get real about left-wing activism? Oh, it sounds nice. It's all about freedom and rights and progress and hashtag be kind. Except, is it? No, for the most part, it's not. For the most part, a lot of these radical leftists, Antifa associated, a lot of them, are frankly terrorists as far as I'm concerned. They use the most vile language. They threaten physical violence. They disrupt society. They're deeply, deeply unpleasant. And for the most part, as well, there's a hardcore of them who are actively dangerous. Now, there's one particular transgender-led direct action group that has come to my attention of late called Bash Back. Now, when you look at this particular organisation and what they stand for, they have a guide of basically masked hammer-wielding activists instructing supporters to select political targets and strike them until they desist. We cannot talk about the particular case of my good friend and former colleague, Anne Widdecombe, who was struck 21 times over the head with a hammer, because there is a charge, and I want to ensure that there is that the justice is delivered and that any future case is not prejudiced. But, of course, Anne was a big advocate and campaigner when it came for conservative social values. And when I see an organisation suggesting, and it's the same with Palestine Action, but suggesting violence is the way forward, that you should start striking people with hammers as part of a resistance, well, it's the reason I'm putting CCTV up in my house. These people blimmin' terrify me. And we have also seen repeatedly now, whether it's that weird little one, Thomas Crooks, who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, or Tyler Johnson, who allegedly may have been the assassin of Charlie Kirk. And you start seeing that there is a sort of new thing going on in society. I'm going to call them rainbow assassins. And I deeply worry that what we have now is a group of extremely radicalised, largely young men, perhaps incels or people who have complex mental health needs, who are being pumped full of artificial hormones, be they SRIs or gender-changing medicines, who go down wormholes online of radical leftism, support these direct action groups, and it only takes one lone wolf to essentially be groomed online, much like radical imams do to Islamists, to then think that it's their job to go and do something about their particular political concerns. Well, let's speak to Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters. Helen, you, I would imagine, know very well what some of these trans groups are like, as someone who has campaigned heavily in these areas. And, you know, we laugh sometimes, oh, they're saying this, they're doing that, look at them and their blue hair and their nose rings, screeching, holding their placards, or, you know, peeing in bottles of water to then chuck around the place, because these aren't men with weird fetishes. No, no, these are poor victims. But we don't talk enough at how violent and dangerous some of these people are.
Yeah, I mean, it's really worrying, isn't it? I think a big problem, very specifically for trans activism, as separate from the other sorts of, you know, violent rhetoric and sometimes action that you describe, is that until recently they had everything their own way. They had persuaded institutions of their false and faulty ideas about the law, that, you know, men did have the right to go into women's spaces and so on. And then the Supreme Court said that they were wrong. And so their entitlement, their gross entitlement and their determination to trample on women's boundaries finally received genuine pushback, and they're enraged. they are responding like the worst sort of men do when women say no to them. And so that really scares me, because these are people who have been allowed to be these entitled, terrifying, violent people without any check for so long, and now they're getting pushback. And the second thing is the police do not take them seriously. I know myself from complaints that I have put in about specific trans activists, in my case a man called Lindsay Watson, who identifies as a woman, he's a former police officer, that they do not take this at all seriously. I know of many people who have complained about Watson. Watson was the person who got Graham Linehan arrested at Heathrow Airport. His complaints are taken seriously and ours are not. I think the police are now finally belatedly waking up to the fact that there's a serious radicalisation problem among a group that they had until very recently thought of only as this incredibly marginalised minority. They think that we, middle-aged women who complain about trans activism, that we're the violent people, we're the oppressors, and that these delightful, poor, vulnerable people, I do not dispute that some trans people are vulnerable, but they have completely overlooked the shield that this has given to these extremely violent, at least in rhetoric, and dangerous men.
I mean, when you look at some of the placards, some of the things, there was a trans rally in the centre of London the other day, and these people actively shout death threats. They call for physical attacks and violence against high-profile women who try and stand up for safeguarding of children. And yet they're not being arrested and put in prison, are they?
No, I mean, one of the posters at that recent rally said something about how 90% of pigs are gassed, and yet there are still TERFs alive. And, you know, this just goes on without any comment about it. You know, the Mayor of London said what a wonderful thing it was, and the BBC report on this rally didn't mention anything about the violent threats. They're just presenting it as, you know, rainbows and beautiful and love and so on. But those of us who ever say no to these men, we know what actually is inside the concealed front of being kind and supportive and caring about kids and so on is a threat. It's be kind or else.
There's also a deeply disturbing Venn diagram in all of this, where you've got fetish, very adult fetish, things like autogynephilia, and this desire for these people who, the fetishised ones, who want to push this stuff, who want to get into the toilets, get into the changing rooms, they always seem to want to get to the kids. They want the drag queens to go into the schools. They want to be, you know, a brown owl in the Girl Guides. You know, they want to go to the jamboree and sleep in the tent with 12-year-old children. And it's this every single time you see something and you sort of laugh and go, ha ha, how ridiculous. But there's this really sinister undercurrent to this stuff. For example, a taxpayer-funded exhibition, right? Of course, we're giving money to this connected to Blimmin' Arts Council England. That thing should just go at this stage. To highlight trans narratives erased by colonialism. I know, word soup. But they're now sort of trying to suggest that Care Bears, which were, you know, a huge staple in the 80s for children, have been popular for a long time, somehow represent LGBTQA plus staff. Every time I look on the internet, there's a new children's book. I saw one the other day about, you know, a kiddie book on swinging. On swinging. What is going on? Why are we allowing essentially men with pretty niche, pretty alarming, fetishy fantasies to suddenly want to dictate, you know, what children are reading, learning, have access to?
I mean, the thing is that that's cover, isn't it? It's also about trying to make sure that the children are indoctrinated before they're old enough to have any critical thinking. Like if you tell small children that what makes you a boy or a girl is your clothing or your hairstyle, little children don't know any better. They believe that. That's what they think it is anyway, until they work out that it's bodies. So you interrupt the normal developmental phase. That's why they're doing it. And another reason is because they can hide behind the claim that you're being a bigot. You're the one who's weirdly obsessed with children and sex and so on, you know? Like they do these books that, as you say, present like fetish in pride as being something that's about, I don't know, acceptance or something like that. And then the symbols are very babyish. It's not just Care Bears, it's things like the gender unicorn, it's the rainbow sparkles. It's all terribly attractive to children or to troubled teenagers who are kind of trying to retreat to being children. And like you, I find it profoundly disturbing and really quite icky.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you were quite gracious when you said their motivation is to sort of indoctrinate children at a young age to join their cause. I'm not sure that's the motivation. I think sometimes when you got these drag acts going into kids' schools, they want to do sexual things in front of children. I'm sorry, that's just that's the conclusion I draw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that that can be the motive for some of them, but I do think that there is also like the Jesuits used to say, give me the boy before he's 7 and I'll give you the man for life. You know, if you indoctrinate people young, you get to them before there's any critical thinking, and that way you can reshape society. So yeah, I do think it's that too. But you really have to wonder about the drag queens. I mean, I'm all for diversity in children's education. Like, wouldn't it be lovely if we brought in, a disabled veteran, a butch lesbian who's a firefighter, a man who's a nurse, different sorts of people to say to children, look, you can be anyone. Don't let being a boy or a girl hold you back. You don't have to dress a particular way. The world is your oyster when you grow up. That would be diversity, but it's always the drag queens. Like, literally, that is it. That's all of it. And I think that's deeply suspicious.
Exactly. And when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was very much a tomboy. Blimmin' heck, if I was brought up 2 decades later, they'd be pumping me full of puberty blockers. The difficulty is at the heart of all of this, the campaigning that you do, Helen, and brave women like you, fundamentally, it's about protection and about safeguarding. It's not about persecution or punishment or exclusion. It's about saying little girls and women, because of our physicality, because of the different biologies between men and women, we do need single spaces. We do need a bit of a sort of metaphorical force field around us to make sure that we can protect our innocence, our dignity and our safety. And despite there being a court ruling, the very people actually on the front lines of protection of society, the police, are failing to listen. The Supreme Court ruling that said transgender women are not legally women, ignored by Staffordshire Police, who say its custody policy means detainees may be placed in accommodation consistent with their gender identity. So there you go. Big old Bill with a beard the size of Lord knows what, beats up his wife, rapes a woman, and then as he's about to be sent into custody, goes, actually, I identify as Doreen. All right, then, go and be there with women. I don't get it.
I mean, this one, it's even worse than the headline and the story in the paper suggested. I've seen the actual policy, and there's so much that's worse in it. It includes, for example, the idea that if a woman who is detained has to be given a strip search, and that it's a male officer who holds a gender recognition certificate who does it, and she complains that they should consider a non-crime hate incident if she's motivated by bigotry. I'm not making this up. It's got every bit of madness that you could imagine that has been suggested in the last, I guess, decade in various bits of police guidance. We at Sex Matters have taken a judicial review of the National Police Chiefs Council, which has abandoned some of the worst guidance that Staffordshire is still using, but is still insisting that men who say that they are women can ask to be strip searched by female officers. I mean, they generously say that the female officers can say no thanks, but I mean, that's not how policing works. You obey lawful orders by your superior officer, and that's the way it is. So we've gone to court about that, and we're waiting for the ruling. But I mean, another thing that the Staffordshire Police say is that they're campaigning to change the law about this. I mean, since when is it the police's business to campaign to change the law? They're there to uphold the law.
That's exactly it. Exactly it. When this sort of madness, the woke mind virus, gets into the heart of our very institutions that are supposed to be serving and protecting us, we are in big trouble. Helen, it's always a privilege to speak to you. Your work is brave, it's courageous, it is necessary. Thank you ever so much for giving up some of your afternoon to keep us abreast of all of these issues. The brilliant Helen Joyce. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but after that, like I said, democracy rules in Talk Towers. You can get on your soapbox and have your voice heard on the national airwaves. 0344 499 1000. It's your normal network rate. OK, taking a short break and doing calls and messages just after.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, let us do some messages and then finish things up with some brilliant calls. Paul in 5 says, Alex, at what point did we normalise the idea that men can be women and women can be men? Well, never in my world. Never been normalised. That little kids were in the wrong bodies. I tell you what, there's a really brilliant journalist in America called Jennifer Bilek, and she has done the Follow the Money, and it's so interesting when you look at the advocates where all of this started, the big philanthropists who gave money to all the LGB charities and all the rest of it, who then campaigned and worked with Big Pharma and infiltrated Silicon Valley and .com. And if you follow the money and see who's behind it, wow, these are basically just weirdos who want horrible things for this world. Anyway, look her up. Dan from Kent says, I can sort social care today, Alex, and that is get all our Gen Z feeling miserable on benefits, can own their own money and put straight into looking after people who are at the end of care. What's the difference between a slice of bread and Gen Z? You can make soldiers out of a slice of bread. Ha! Very funny. No, actually, that would be quite useful. You know, if you are a young person and you're not actually in employment, education or training, that you're getting handouts from taxpayers, wouldn't it be great if they went to interact with old people in nursing homes, actually, you know, meet the greatest generation and see what having a spine might look like? But no, I think people should be. Well, I also, like I said, I think the armed forces would do these people a world of good. Or going into the agricultural sector, seasonal workers, you're out in the sunshine, toiling in the fields, getting close to the planet that feeds you. All these things are extremely important for mental health. I'm afraid watching Catchphrase at 3 in the afternoon, smoking a bifter, less so. Right. I think it's a generous country that we are. I think now is the time to stop throwing money around to other countries. It's about time we thought of our own first. Look, I agree. There should be foreign direct investment, not foreign aid. It should be a Marshall programme, not just marshalling all of taxpayers' money to give to programmes that aren't going to make a difference because they just end up in the back pocket of a dictator. Right. Shall we do some calls? Let's speak to Ian, who's a new caller day to day. Loads of people are plucking up the courage to pick up the blower. Welcome, Ian, in North Wales. How are you? Bore da?
I don't speak Welsh.
Oh, well, neither do I. That's about all I know. Yeah. So that's you and I both.
Just inside Wales. I'm still influenced by England, so... But anyway, yeah, well, first off, I think that your programme's absolutely brilliant. It puts people... just common sense... and I wish the politicians would listen and sort of take some notice. But what I wanted to phone up, I was listening before, and a lady was talking about that she's just had to go onto benefits.
Charlotte, yes, that's right. Who needs the knee surgery? Mm.
Yeah, and it got me thinking from a different point of view as a disabled person myself. I've worked all my life. I was injured in the RAF many years ago. I had a spinal injury and head injury, and I got PTSD and things. But I've managed to stay and work. But I've been on disability for the last few years. I was on universal credit with the limited capability for work. I get my RAF disability pension and a war pension. But I was getting universal credit, the full whack. But because my ex-partner sold a house and I finished up with some money, I've had to come off universal credit. Now, there's only two NONS means tested benefits. Mm. One of them is PIP, which I get, and the other one is ESA. But they've changed ESA recently. They've called it new style ESA.
What is ESA, my darling? I'm afraid I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, Employment Support Allowance.
Right. So
my brother, he's autistic and learning disabilities. He's been on ESA all his life and things like that. But they've changed the new style now, so it's only for people who have been working in the last 2 years. But because I've been on disability for the last few years, I don't qualify for it. But people like a friend of mine who's got savings, she's got lots of savings, she owns her own house. She's just become disabled. She's had cancer and she's had some spinal surgeries and things like that. So, but because she's worked in the last 2 years, she gets the full whack ESA and the full, PIP for the mobility. She gets everything. But because I'm disabled, I'm not entitled to it. Where
it's
a few
such
years ago, I would have been entitled to it.
It's such a complex and convoluted system, and so often when it comes to welfare support and when it comes to things that, I mean, look, even something like when we were all helped with our fuel bills by the government, and at the time I said, come on, you know, this stuff needs to be means tested. You can't be giving, you know, Bernie Ecclestone, for want of a better person. No offence, Bernie, if you're listening, I think you're awesome. But you don't need help paying his gas bill over winter. But then when you get down to actually trying to means test things and do a case-by-case basis of how we give people certain support, it is so complex. It is so difficult to do. But what is so clear is there are people who know how to game the system. There are people who definitely do not need support, and billions wasted being given to people who are feckless and reckless with my hard-earned cash. And then there are people like you who end up slipping through the net. And look, I'm not an expert in the field of welfare and how one changes this, but I think we definitely do need to begin, especially when it comes to things like mental health and young people. To me, that is one of the first things that needs to be picked apart. Ian, thank you for your service in the RAF. Thank you for your call. We really do appreciate you. Let's speak now to Miranda, who's in Cumbria. Good afternoon, Miranda.
Good afternoon. It was the Albanian drug dealer's child that he couldn't be deported because he or she was. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was an Albanian drug dealer who came into the country illegally, pretended he was from Kosovo as some sort of, you know, poor asylum seeker. But he came over here to basically deal in coke. Nasty, dangerous man, has been imprisoned. And, of course, his immigration lawyer combs through everything, does the big survey of where can we find the loophole, and comes up with the idea that his little girl, because she wets the bed, is the reason that he can't be deported because, well, it might exacerbate her condition.
The thing is, there are so many issues here. Was the child bedwetting before he went into prison? Did they do a survey? I mean, this sounds really callous, of the bed linen every morning. And it's just incredible that the judge has been hoodwinked by this. Has she been assessed by a psychologist? Was the GP involved? And at the end of the day, who paid for this? But if you give a child a massive drink before they go to bed, the likelihood is they will wet the bed. So I'm incensed by this, to tell you the truth.
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Because the thing is, it's without a doubt this horrible drug dealer who is campaigning to stay in the country. The bedwetting isn't his shtick, is it? He probably doesn't even care. He was looking for the one thing, the excuse. And there's something kind of sick. It's a bit like using your child as your own human shield, isn't it? You know, it's like the chicken nuggets case. It's like, leave the kids out of it. This is a bad man, should be deported, a foreign criminal who has no right to be here. He's a threat to society. End of. End of. Miranda, thank you ever so much for your call. Hello, Mr. Collins.
Nuggets versus diapers.
Yeah, I know.
Which is the greatest breach of human rights?
I feel like you know, in Talk Towers, there are certain things guaranteed to pop up on a regular basis. One is some sort of migrant sexual assault, and the other is some sort of ridiculous anti-deportation order by a woke judge.
I mean, I'm willing to believe that, you know, if you sifted through the thousands of pages, there's always more to the story or there's something else. Right, even allowing for that, we're still not sold on this malarkey because that's become part of the headline. When Andy Burnham took over, he's never going to be like Donald Trump. But the bit about Trump that even those who don't like Trump acknowledge is that business of saying, this is unacceptable. This is not happening. Not on my watch. That's how I want a leader to sound. Shooting from the hip, from the gut.
What are you making of Andy Pandy so far? Because do you know what? It's the mawkish, infantile, facile, babyish, puerile. He's like a 14-year-old influencer. Hey, look at my favourite snack. Look at me doing a DJ set. I'm like, have you seen the state of the country by any chance? He wants to be a parochial leader. Stay as a mayor.
Is he going to stop that malarkey?
Oh, he has
to.
Did
somebody say, did Louise Hake say to him, right, OK, you do the TikTok stuff. We'll do 3 weeks of that. It's on the spreadsheet somewhere. Then no more TikTok after that.
Have you noticed, right?
What's the deal?
Someone's done montages online of Ed Davey doing some sort of karaoke, of Zach Polanski doing some sort of rap,
Singing,
of that Green woman who got elected in wherever it was, Gorton and Denton, you know, on the streets with like the, you know, the Gaza lot doing a music set. Now of, you know, Andy